Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. I'd like to call our regular meeting of our Town Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Today is Monday, May 5th, 2025. It is 6:32 p.m. My name is Robert Klee. I'm the chair of our Woodbridge Town Planning and Zoning Commission. Other members of the commission who are with us here tonight are Andrew Skolnick, Jeff Kennedy, Kathy Hunter, Aaron Hoffman, and Ben Cherry. We are, as always, ably supported by Chris Sullivan, who's our town land use analyst and zoning enforcement officer. It's nice to see all of you, and it's nice to see all the members of the public who have joined us today. Apologies that we may be a little short of seats. There is still one up front if folks are looking for a chair. Our agenda tonight has been available on the town website. Tonight we're going to start with public hearings on the application for site plan approval and a special permit for excavation, removal, and filling at 20 Lunar Drive and 23 Lunar Drive. Then we will have a public hearing on Stephen Mason's application to amend the zoning regulations related to Section 3.2 on opportunity housing.
Chairman Clay, if I could just
Sure.
interject at this point. I just want to disclose for this particular agenda item that I have a personal history with Amy Morella and Kathy Wick, who previously filed a complaint with the Board of Ethics alleging corrupting influence and seeking my removal from this commission. That complaint was investigated by the town and adjudicated as unfounded on April 2nd, 2025. So, adversarial relationship arising from unfounded complaint alone should not disqualify me from participating in this public hearing, and I believe that full participation at the public hearing is appropriate, especially when transparency and a complete public record are essential. If following the public hearing and deliberation, a vote is called on the application, I will evaluate at that time, based on the record, if any further mitigation steps are essential.
All right, thank you for that statement. So I will continue with the overview of our meeting for today. New business, we didn't receive any new business today, did we, Chris? Thank you. In our work session, we will deliberate on our evening's public hearings. We will also have a discussion about the Toll Brothers development and the bond that's on file with the town for sediment and erosion control and stormwater management. And we may discuss other items that were listed on the agenda for today, including the 804 Fountain Street, which I think is scheduled for a public hearing next month.
Correct.
And updates on where we are on our plan of conservation and development and SCROG reports, etc. We'll also go over any correspondence which we received, which we did receive at least one email from Julian Brown regarding an expanded use of 9 Lucy Street, who wanted direction on whether any additional permitting would be needed. Very full agenda for today, so let's get started. Up first, and I guess, Chris, this is a question. We have scheduled public hearings for both 20 Lunar Drive and 23 Lunar Drive. Do we have to do them in series, or can we have them consolidated? These are...
I believe it can be consolidated. These have already previously been approved by this commission, and the permits have expired, so they're coming back to you to basically reinstate permits that had previously been approved.
Thank you, Chris. And these are adjoining parcels on
They
Lunar
oppose
Drive.
each other at the end of the cul-de-sac on Lunar.
Well, maybe we should just hear from the applicant who will walk through all of that. So if the applicant would like to come forward, sign in, state your name, and we can get started regarding your application. And hopefully our commission members still have the documents we received now a few months ago.
Yep.
Hello, I'm Alan Shepard, professional engineer and partner in the firm of Nowakowski, Obiem, John Kane, 415 Howe Avenue, Shelton, Connecticut. And about 14 years ago, we came in with 2 applications on the end of Lunar Drive. That's off of Bradley Drive. In back of us is West Rock, which we all know. So we had an application for 2 small 5,000 square foot buildings. we went through, and had the site plans done, had the approvals. The market wasn't all that great, back then. It took a little while to get out of it, and then we had COVID and everything else like that. So the owner of the property took a while to get going, but now he's really ready to do something with the property. It's on the cul-de-sac. We tucked the buildings into the hillside. We did detailed topo at the time, so we're not grading into the hillside. We're just excavating out 5,000, approximately 5,000 cubic feet and 10,000 cubic feet on the other one, which isn't too bad nowadays. We do a lot more than that. But then it would be, the back wall of the buildings would be like a retaining wall. So we don't want to crunch down into the hill. We have the drainage, the lighting, the landscaping plans, all the same that we did before. Nothing changed. And the market is pretty good for that type of building now, small and, commercial building. So, considering that we haven't changed anything, we're keeping to the same footprint. As you can see, that we're not touching the hillside with the grades. We worked very hard at that. So it's at the end of the cul-de-sac, commercial property. We'd like to seek reapproval for those applications.
Great. Anything else you'd like to add before I turn it to our questions from the commission members?
No, I think that's pretty straightforward.
Great. So I open it up to commission members. Just before we do, Chris, I think I just heard the news. Aaron, you're now a full member? No.
I believe so. Yes, it's in the Board of Selectmen's minutes.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, I hadn't heard it either. Congratulations.
Yes.
So do we,
So you have 5 full members present,
Yes.
and you have 1 alternate Kathy.
right, and how many do we need?
Your full quorum is 6.
Gotcha. Okay. So I will seat all 6,
Okay?
correct? Questions for the applicant?
What is the current use of the property?
The current use of the property, it's been subdivided a long time ago, so they've been sitting vacant for a number of years. It's at the end of the cul-de-sac, the slope goes up and back. The applicant was gonna develop on it years ago, but he didn't. And so they're vacant properties right now that we would turn into tax-paying properties.
From your application, the intended use seems either office building, including medical and/or storage indoor and outside. Can you just give a better sense of what's planned for these two
Yeah.
locations, or are there different plans for each?
No, we're gonna leave it open to what we find for the market. And we're finding a market for these small type of buildings. The days of finding IBM or Pfizer coming in or something are gone. But we do have small businesses, and they could be, we even had one where they do flowers, deliver flowers to supermarkets. You wouldn't think of that as a business, but it's a business that pays pretty well, and they have truck drivers that go all over the place. So these small commercial properties do lend out to small subcontractor type of businesses, fabrication businesses, some office, but not large office. We're not getting a lot of large office, but someone that wants to do some office floor space to sell a product or sell industrial product. So whether it be tables, commercial benches or whatever, we do see a need for that in Connecticut, and they are filling up pretty fast. The ones we do fill up pretty fast.
Is there any hammering or explosive necessities for this excavation, or is it all done with,
There may be some blasting. So as we get back into the hillside, I suspect most of it's rubble. We have a 10 to 13 foot cut there. And a lot of it is rubble that came down over the hills. So a lot of it would be excavation. But I would imagine, it's possible that we may have to blast something, which isn't the end of the world for us. I don't see it as a problem.
what's the estimated length of time for this excavation stage?
I would think it would take 3 to 6 months to do the excavation work. We like to repurpose the material as we take it out. So, as the market demands, and the market does demand pretty good for fill right now. So, it should be a building season, to take it out, I would think.
The application is a bond estimate,
There's a bond estimate.
so that's required, right, Chris?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a sizable bond estimate too, and that part of the reason for that is, if something goes wrong, the town can always pull a bond. Or it makes people behave well. Either way you gotta look at it.
Other questions from commission members? I'm looking to my right and left. Any questions for the applicant? All right, hearing none, I think we can move to the public comment portion. So thank you for that presentation. I'll have you vacate that seat in case we do have members of the public. And Chris, do I need to have the public hearing on each
No,
one
they
separately?
can just comment and then they can just identify if there's a
Okay.
particular parcel that they're concerned about or have comments on.
Thank you. So I'd like to open up our public hearing for the application for both 20 Lunar Drive and 23 Lunar Drive for site development and a special exception permit for excavation, removal, filling, and grading of the site. This public hearing is for the purpose of listening to your comments. You will each have up to 3 minutes to give your brief statements into the record. TPZ members and applicants will not be answering any questions that you raise. Your public statements and any written comments that were submitted to the town will become part of the public record for the TPC's consideration of this application. Just, Chris, were there any written comments received on either 20 Lunar Drive or 23 Lunar Drive?
And we did refer this to the Council of Governments, South Central Regional Council of Governments, and I did distribute their comments, and it's the typical comment where there's no adverse impact on abutting municipalities or Long Island Sound.
Thank you. So with that written comment in the record and the public statements we hear today will constitute the record. As a reminder to everyone, off-the-record communication with a member of the commission on the merits of the application is prohibited, and I ask those members of the public providing comments on the application of 20 Lunar Drive and 23 Lunar Drive to be brief and focused on the proposed special exception permit and to try to avoid unreasonable repetition so we can hear all of the concerns that you and your neighbors may have. So I ask, does anyone wish to offer a public comment on the application by 20 Lunar Drive and 23 Lunar Drive? Yes, if you could please come forward and sign in and then state your name for your record. Folks, I will use my phone for the 3 minutes, so you'll get a warning when your 3 minutes is up. But I won't start until you've signed in and introduce yourself to the commission.
You-
Good evening. My name is Carol Levarek. From 102 North Racebrook Road. I had no intention of making comment on this until I heard that there was going to be potential blasting there, and my concern would be for the shelter. The animals will be totally riled by that, and I think that it's inappropriate to have blasting that close to the shelter, and I ask that the committee consider the implications of that as you consider this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Would anyone else like to make a public comment on the application for 20 or 23? Yes, oh, I see your hand. Please come forward and sign in and state your name for the record once you're all settled.
My question is...
Oh, if you could, I'm sorry, if you could just introduce
Yeah,
yourself.
my name is Lou House. I live on Pleasant Hill Road. And my question is there a restriction on the kinds of material that can be stored in these places on Lunar Drive? Can explosives or chemicals be stored? And if so, what would the danger be to the community? That's my question.
Great, thank you for your public comment. I'll ask again, are there any members of the public who would like to offer a public comment on the application for 20 and 23 Lunar Drive? I'll ask again, would anyone like to make a public comment on either 20 or 23 Lunar Drive and their application for a special exception permit for excavation, removal, filling, and grading of the site? And as is my habit, I will ask a third time if there's anyone interested in making a public comment on 20 or 23 Lunar Drive. So seeing none, I would appreciate a motion to close the public hearing on the application for a site development and special exception permit for the excavation and filling of 20 and 23 Lunar Drive.
So
Moved.
Second.
Chris, did you get that?
Mm-hmm.
Moved
Thank you.
and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? The public hearing on the application for a site development and special exception permit for the excavation and filling of 20 and 23 Lunar Drive is now closed. Thank you for your assistance in managing the public hearing. Thank you to the commission for being good listeners and for your questions. I look forward to our deliberations in the work sessions. Thank you to the applicant for your informative presentation, and thank you to the public for your participation in the process through the public comments. Alrighty.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to the next public hearing, as I had previously noted, I must recuse myself, having recused myself from the original amendment for the same conflict that I had with that public hearing.
Okay.
I shall return for the work session with regard to the Baldwin Development application.
Great. So you may want to find a comfortable
I will.
place to sit in back. So next up is our public hearing for the application by Stephen Mason for the amendment to the zoning regulations, which I'll wait for a moment for Andrew to leave the room. And if you want to turn back on or uncover the slider. Terrific. So I'll start again. Next up is our public hearing for the application by Stephen Mason for amendment to the zoning regulations, specifically to repeal in its entirety the amendments to Section 3.2 on opportunity housing that were enacted on December 2nd, 2024, and replace them with the regulations in place before the December 2nd, 2024 amendment. And who would like to begin for the applicant? If you could please introduce yourself to the commission for the record.
Thank you. My name is Amy Morella. I live at 184 Women Road. I'm here on behalf of Steve Mason. You received a designation letter from Steve last week. And I'd just like to note also that I am a listed supporter. There were over 40 names supporting the application.
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh,
Yeah, so Amy, you probably have to get closer.
great. All right. Can you hear me now?
And I don't know if the folks,
It may not be on.
the red light is on means it's on.
So audiovisual may need to help me. I am speaking up.
That's being picked up on television, if you will, but it's not
making your voice
All right, I'll be really loud. And if you think I'm shouting at you, please understand I am not. This is a friendly tone. It's just meant to be heard by others. My name is Amy Morella. I live at 184 Rimmon Road. I was designated to present on behalf of Steve Mason. You received a letter last week to that effect, signed by Mr. Mason. Just to be clear, I am also a supporter of the application. There were over 40 people listed on the original application. Before we get started, I appreciate Ms. Hunter's statement. I would like to add a question for her or for Mr. Klee, however is appropriate. Mr. Mason, before he was unable to attend this evening, did send an email requesting that it be shared with the commission, and my understanding it was, in which he requested a recusal by Ms. Hunter based on the video of the March 3rd TBZ Commission meeting in which the application for Steve was received. At that meeting, just to go through what was stated, Ms. Sullivan, the land use analyst, explained to the board members that the matter required a public hearing. At that point, Ms. Hunter interjected, quote, "But don't we have the option to deny the application if it is not?" End quote, because Ms. Sullivan then interjected, quote, "You still have to have a public hearing," end quote. Ms. Hunter then said, quote, "even if it does not have merit," end quote. Based on that, Mr. Mason states the following: "It seems clear from this exchange that Ms. Hunter, before hearing any of the information to be presented at the public hearing, believes that my application lacks merit. It appears that she has prejudged the application when by law she is required to make a determination based solely on the evidence presented at the public hearing. I therefore request that she recuse herself from this matter." As a follow-up, I hand-delivered a letter based on the some folks who know better than I that there is a Connecticut law. This was delivered by hand this morning. The Connecticut law requires that TPZ members cannot participate in a matter in which they have a, quote, "personal interest," end quote, which is CGS 8-11. And Connecticut courts have consistently held that a personal interest of this type includes any bias or predetermination which impairs the commissioner's ability to render a fair and objective decision. Citing Anderson v. Zoning Commission of the City of Norwalk, 157 Connecticut 285. Going on, Commissioner Hunter's statement that the application does not have merit made prior to a hearing or any meaningful review of the application clearly demonstrates that she cannot render the fair and objective decision required by law. For that reason, she must be recused. I did ask in my letter that this be resolved quietly, so as there would be no need for this matter to be brought to the attention of the public, but apparently I needed to do so. So on the record, I just want to note those submissions by Mr. Mason and myself on his behalf.
Thank you, Amy. And Kathy, would you like to respond at this point?
You know, I do want to bring up that on March 3rd, I in fact raised a procedural question about whether the commission was required to hear this petition at all, given that it's substantially the same changes that we addressed on December 2nd, 2024. And my contribution to the process was to consider our discretion under Connecticut General Statute 8-3, which allows the commission to protect zoning integrity by declining to rehear the same changes within 12 months absent materially changed circumstances. And the applicant did not provide any evidence that there has been a changed circumstances. Therefore, we could have considered denying the hearing of the application at that point. It had nothing to do with the public hearing. It was the fact that at the point prior to, we could have denied the consideration of the application because it represents a zoning change that was the same or substantially the same change that we decided in December 2nd. And to uphold the integrity of our zoning and our decisions, we have to allow our zoning decisions to see whether in fact there is a material impact in what happens. And the fact that they were dialing back our zoning, there was no evidence besides speculation that that would be a change in circumstances. So what I brought up at the point was a consideration to not hear the application because it was a zoning, it was a rehearing of a zoning change that we made in December 2nd, and we don't have to rehear a petition within a 12-month period per Connecticut Statute 8-3.
So I'll just note that, Ms. Hunter, it's very interesting to hear you have that to say. It was not on the record on March 3rd. And the video is quite clear as to what was said. So now I will proceed. And I did present this document. I will offer one apology. I added one document apparently after the deadline that I was not aware was in effect. I appreciate that Ms. Sullivan copied it for you, and I will note at the time where it should be added to the supporting memorandum for reference. So the purpose of this application for zoning amendment is to address two main problems attending the amendments made on December 2nd, 2024. First, the process by which those amendments were made, and second, the substance of those amendments. This application requests a simple reversion to the regulations as they were before December 2, 2024, as a first step in achieving a thoughtful, comprehensive, well-researched, and logically coherent review of Woodbridge's opportunity housing regulations that encompasses all of the zoning districts in the town. This second step must include ample opportunity for meaningful public input, which was missing from the December 2 amendment process. This approach is essential to reverse the action taken on December 2nd quickly, so as to remove the threat that any additional building applications can be submitted under those flawed amendments. So with respect to the process, 3 points. First, the notice of the December 2nd public hearing was ineffective in fact, and inconsistent with Woodbridge's history of transparent decision-making. 2 notices were published in the New Haven Register, the second on Thanksgiving Day. The New Haven Register is no longer widely read in town. Proof that this notice was wholly inadequate, in fact, is that not a single member of the public offered comment at the hearing. Therefore, the purpose of the legally required public hearing, to hear from the public, failed in its entirety. It is clear that town residents would have appeared at the December 2 hearing if they had known about it, for many residents spoke at length at the subsequent January 8th and February 5th meetings of the Board of Selectmen and Housing Committee, respectively, complaining about the December 2 process and decision. Supreme Court Justice Benjamin Cardozo famously wrote, "The technical compliance with the law may be its mark, but it is never its measure." Town leaders have acknowledged the inadequacy of the notice and have already addressed the situation by creating a new area on the town website where all legal notices are posted. That, however, does not cure the ineffective notice of the December 2 hearing. Second, as the December 2 applicant's attorney, Mr. John Nuff, stated on the record, the public hearing started, quote, "a new record," end quote, making prior informal discussions irrelevant. When one watches the hearing video recording, it appears that the TPZ members did not understand this important fact, as they asked very few questions. Later in this presentation, the inadequacy of TPZ's inquiry will be described in more detail. Finally, the rush process by which the December 2 amendments were approved is inconsistent with the treatment that other, much less impactful matters have received from this commission. For example, the TPZ opened a public hearing on July 1, 2024, to perform a, quote, "cleanup," end quote, of the regulations to address a series of what were described as, quote, "Scribner's errors," end quote. The public hearing was repeatedly continued and did not close until November 4th, 2024, even though submissions during the public hearing process were minimal, 2 verbal comments and 2 written comments. The amount of time and attention devoted to what was essentially a copy editing exercise was vast compared to the time and attention devoted to a substantive revision of the regulations themselves. Now for the substance. The applicant appearing on December 2 requested 4 zoning modifications for opportunity housing. Maximum height increase from 2.5 to 4 stories, maximum density increase from 15 to 18 units per acre, impervious coverage allowance increase from 22.5 to 30.0% of the site, and required affordable units reduced from 20% to 12% of the total units if half of the affordable units are for 80% AMI and half for 60% AMI. The applicant for the December 2 zoning change made it clear to the TBZ that the amendments were designed to facilitate a high-density housing development at 804 Fountain Street. In fact, an application for that development was filed by the same applicant on January 2, 2025, the first business day after the regulations went into effect. Now, typically, such an opening salvo is not the minimum an applicant will accept. Typically, an applicant will ask for more than he will settle for, but we do not know whether the applicant would have settled for less, since he was never asked on December 2nd which, if any, of his requests were essential. In making his request, the applicant's attorney claimed that Woodbridge's regulations were, quote, pretty aggressive, end quote, relative to other towns, but provided no citations of other towns' regulations to substantiate that claim. Details from the zoning regulations in neighboring towns, which will be described in a few minutes, show the opposite, that Woodbridge's regulations, even before the December 2 amendments, are much less stringent than other towns. The TPZ failed to ask Mr. Nuff for examples. The applicant claimed that his requests to amend were grounded in the reports of 2 engineers, who said that the project could not be built under the existing density, height, and coverage regulations. But the applicant did not submit the engineers' reports. Conclusions were simply stated verbally without any written evidence to support them. How do we know the conclusions are accurate? Again, the TBZ failed to inquire. The attorney's supporting memorandum, in which he sets out his justification for the requested zoning amendment, quotes extensively from the town's affordable housing plan, stating that the plan, quote, makes key findings related to the need for affordable housing in Woodbridge, end quote. However, these so-called key findings are riddled with errors. As has been repeatedly pointed out in public meetings, the affordable housing plan falsely states that Woodbridge has a declining population and makes unsupported claims about income level and student enrollment. In the interest of time, detailed discussion of these errors is in Appendix A. In fact, the errors of the Housing Committee's Affordable Housing Plan have been discussed at Board of Selectmen meetings and Housing Committee meetings multiple times, beginning in September of 2023. And for your reference, I gave you a handout, which is the submission in January of 2024 to the Board of Selectmen, which includes attached the submission to the Housing Committee in September of 2023 regarding those errors. Why would the TPZ fail to question an applicant's reliance on an affordable housing plan that is known to be flawed? The applicant claimed that he requested reduced affordability requirements because the 20% minimum presented a financial barrier. The applicant offered no financial calculations to justify this claim. His attorney merely stated that the lack of opportunity housing applications in Woodbridge to date was a, quote, testament, end quote, to that claim. The TPZ members failed to question that. The applicant's engineering reports were based on the specific challenges of this specific site, which are many. The site is an odd pie shape, it is dramatically sloped and rocky, and it contains wetlands and a watercourse. Other sites might be far less challenging to develop under the regulations that existed prior to December 2nd. Why should the specific challenges of a single site lead to such dramatic changes for an entire zone? Not only did the TPZ grant every requested change zone-wide, It gave the applicant even more than he asked for by suggesting his plan should include 3-bedroom units, which were absent from the proposal as it was described in informal earlier meetings. When he heard this suggestion, the applicant's attorney was clearly surprised and said that most towns don't want 3-bedroom units since they drive up school enrollment. Taken together, these multiple instances show that the TPZ failed to establish a substantive record justifying the regulatory changes that were adopted on December 2, 2024. Now, stepping back to the larger picture, the purpose of zoning regulations. And I appreciate you're giving me the time to read this in full, because not only is it the result of a lot of work, but we have also presented some slides just so that people can follow along visually, and I appreciate that flexibility. The larger picture. This commissioner's own consultant during the 2 Orchard Road deliberations, Mr. Glenn Chalder of Planometrics, emphasized that zoning regulations should find balance among competing factors, that is, housing, community, and the environment. Indeed, a town's overall zoning scheme should be both balanced and should have an internal logic in the way different areas are zoned. For example, the highest density should be in the most urban areas. Likewise, the tallest buildings should be in the most urban areas. These logical principles align with current thinking and planning, sometimes called smart growth or new urbanism. And these principles include creating walkable neighborhoods, keeping neighborhood centers compact and rural land open, and promoting a mix of uses, residential, office, and retail. These principles have been consistently articulated in many publications. For example, I draw your attention to Economic Vitality and Land Use by the Connecticut Regional Institute for the 21st Century. Unfortunately, Woodbridge's December 2 Opportunity Housing Regs for Zone A are inconsistent with well-established smart growth principles. Indeed, the December 2nd zone change upends the balance in Woodbridge's zoning and lacks internal logic because A, the highest residential density is now permitted in the least dense area. 18 units per acre in Zone A represents density that is 27 times the density of 1 unit for 1.5 acres in the underlying zone. The second, or B, the tallest buildings are now permitted in the least dense area. And third, there is also no logic to supporting the lessening of affordability requirements. As shown below, and later on in my presentation, other area towns require 20% or more and have achieved many more affordable units than Woodbridge. Recently, the Connecticut General Assembly Housing Committee voted to push forward SB 1262, a bill that would create a sales tax break on construction materials for developments with 20% affordable units. This threshold in proposed legislation indicates that leaders on the State Housing Committee consider 20% to be a minimum standard. Woodbridge's own zoning regulations themselves include principles and definitions with which the December 2 amendments do not align. Zone A is defined in the regulations as low-density residential. And yet, the highest residential density in the town is now allowed in this so-called low-density zone. This illogical, unequitable situation should be carefully examined and remedied. The introduction to the regulations states their purpose, quote, "These zoning regulations are intended to guide land use activities in Woodbridge in ways that will maintain and enhance community character and protect the public health, safety, and welfare." End quote. Further, Section 2 elaborates that the purpose of the regs is to prevent, quote, "to prevent the overcrowding of land, to avoid undue concentration of populations, to facilitate adequate provision of transportation, water, sewerage, schools, parks, and other public requirements, with full consideration of the character of the districts and their suitability for particular uses, to conserve the value of buildings and encourage the most appropriate use of land throughout said town," end quote. The incongruity of the current regulations passed on December 2 with this statement, which is based on the State Zoning Enabling Act, seems obvious. Surely density of 27 times that of the adjacent area would be considered overcrowding and undue concentration. Surely a massive 4-story apartment building in a neighborhood of average-size homes no taller than 2.5 stories on minimum 1.5 acre lots violates the low-density definition of the district and fails to, quote, encourage the most appropriate use of land as set forth in section 1.2. The TPZ's sweeping and swift change to the opportunity housing regulations is also at odds with the TPZ's ongoing effort to update the town's plan of conservation and development. As part of the POCD process, the TPZ conducted a survey available for all town residents. As the POCD consultant SLR noted, quote, respondents generally feel that there is an appropriate mix of housing types in the community. But nearly 60% stated that Woodbridge's housing stock is not accessible and affordable to people of different ages and lifestyles and would like to see more affordable single-family structures options in the community. Note, what they said they wanted is more affordable single-family structures as options in the community. In the latest public event regarding the POCD, which was April 8th, the consultant shared with residents the new POCD's draft goals, strategies, and actions. Goal 1.1 is facilitate sustainable growth, and strategy 111 is guide future growth to be consistent with existing land use patterns, environmental protection, and infrastructure capabilities. There is no indication on the record TPZ took any of these values or aspirations into account when passing the December 2 amendments, especially consistency with existing land use patterns. In contrast, should the TPZ adopt the proposed amendment, then the TPZ will have time to achieve the goals set out for in your draft TPZ, draft POCD, goal 1.1 and specifically 1.1E, which is, quote, review for consistency and amend as need the town's zoning regulations to be consistent with both the POCD and the Connecticut general statutes, end quote. Consistent with that goal, the TPZ should revert back to the opportunity housing regulations as they existed at the start of the POCD update in the spring of 2024, and after the POCD is final, take up a thoughtful review of the opportunity housing regulations for all zoning districts. Now we get to a comparison of Woodbridge to other town zoning regulations with respect to height, density, and affordability requirements as those were established by the December 2 amendments. We have a chart to help facilitate this, as well as details in an appendix to this memorandum, which you received. What you will see is that these other town zoning regulations, when compared, establish that the December 2 amendments place Woodbridge well outside the local norm. Specifically, a look at the regulations in New Haven, Hamden, Guilford, Orange, and Woodbury shows, A, none of these towns allow height for multifamily to exceed height for single family in a residential zone. B, all of those towns severely limit the locations where multifamily can be built to areas either adjacent to or in commercial or mixed-use zones. And C, none of those towns allow density that is anywhere near 27 times the underlying residential zoning density. Also notable is the fact that all of these towns, while having much more restrictive multifamily zoning regulations than Woodbridge, have achieved a much higher percentage of affordable housing. It is also important to note that the building proposed at 804 Fountain Street, which is now being pursued in light of the December 2 changes, could not be built on the other side of the parkway in the city of New Haven. The single-family density in that neighborhood is 6 units per acre with a maximum height limit of 35 feet. There is an overlay zone, allowing the Westgate Townhomes apartment complex, but even the overlay zone imposes a maximum density and height that is dramatically less than the December 2 Woodbridge regulations now allow. The New Haven overlay zone, its maximum is 12 units per acre, with the maximum height remaining capped at 35 feet, the very same height as for a single-family residence in that area. This comparative analysis shows that it is possible to achieve more housing diversity without loosening regulations to the extent that Woodbridge has done. For brevity's sake, the several towns' regulations are summarized in Appendix B. These are just a few examples of nearby towns that are promoting more housing diversity with more precision and more consideration for existing residential neighborhoods than is afforded by the December 2 amendments. Should the TPZ adopt this proposal and revert back to the opportunity housing regulations for Zone A as they existed prior to the December 2nd, it would then have the opportunity to conduct a thorough examination of the zoning regulations in other Connecticut towns. Next, proposed revisions. At the direction of the TPZ chairman, Robert Klee, Woodbridge Land Use Analyst Chris Sullivan sent applicant Steve Mason a letter on March 28, 2025, requesting that he bring, quote, planning studies and best practices and other examples of successful opportunity housing, end quote. This request is surprising, as the record reflects that TPZ made no similar request to Attorney Nuff when he filed a request for zoning change on behalf of his client, the developer of 804 Fountain Street. It is also worth noting that Ms. Sullivan sent an email on March 17th to the town planning consultant, Justin LaFountain, at Chairman Klee's direction, requesting that the planning consultant, quote, provide a sense of the impact from going back to the previous regulations given the path of the commission had traveled to get to the existing regulations, end quote. How odd, given that the current request is simply to restore the status quo, while the path to the December 2 changes lacked any review of the impact the changes would make to the vast Zone A acreage subject to the amendments. Notwithstanding a certain perplexity at the inconsistent approach to these two applications, this application here offers concrete examples of successful opportunity housing regulations from nearby towns and lays out examples of best practices. In addition, here are some further thoughts on how TBZ might do a better job in zoning for opportunity housing. First, the overall goal of the zoning regulations with regard to increasing housing diversity in Woodbridge should be to increase smaller, more affordable units without it adding a lot of market rate homes. The town's infrastructure, its municipal services, public safety, schools, and public works limits the amount of residential growth that is feasible while striving to expand affordable housing. The town's taxation burden on residents is high compared to nearby communities. The elementary school is operating at very full capacity, and the town's existing suite of public service depends on a volunteer fire department and private garbage collection. Most importantly, the state's laws and guidance are focused on incentivizing towns to expand the availability of legally affordable homes, not market rate housing. Further, we should take seriously the statement in our town's current zoning regulations, section 1.2, which I just quoted, which is to prevent the overcrowding of land, to avoid undue concentration of populations, facilitate adequate provision of transportation, water, sewerage, schools, parks, and other public requirements with full consideration of the character of the districts and their suitability for particular uses, to conserve the value of buildings and encourage the most appropriate use of land throughout said town. Accordingly, the suggested revisions to the town's opportunity housing regulations include: 1, multifamily height maximum should be no higher than single family in residential zones. This change back to the status quo would align Woodbridge with its neighboring towns and prevent incongruous large apartment buildings in established single-family neighborhoods. 2, minimum and maximum parcel size for opportunity housing should be established in all zones. For example, in Zone A, there should be a minimum of 5 acres, maximum of 10 acres required for multifamily development. In the denser residential zones, the minimum should be 1 acre. This change would prevent disproportionately large development on relatively small lots that could overwhelm established neighborhoods. 3, set a maximum number of units per project proportionate to each zone's underlying density. Again, this change allows for growth but prevents massive scale development that would overwhelm existing single-family houses. 4, create equity and density levels across residential zones by using the same standard multiplier for maximum density in Zone A that currently appears applies in Zone B. For example, since the current multiplier in Zone B is 5 times, if you apply equity, then 5 times applied to Zone A would result in 4 units per acre density. And that would be both restoring equity and internal logic to the town's zoning scheme. Last but not least, restore the 20% affordable unit minimum. This standard is typical in the other towns in our local area, as I've just cited, and will help Woodbridge achieve more affordable units, both in actual numbers and when calculated as a percentage of total housing stock. Of course, all of these suggestions are offered with the presumption that the TPZ should complete the pending POCD and conduct a thorough review of existing opportunity housing zoning regulations for all zones, so that the resultant changes will be both consistent with the new POCD and internally logical from one zone to another. Now, in an effort to be helpful, we've listed a few other ways that our town might add diverse housing without adding market rate homes. The first is to promote accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, and incentivize homeowners, perhaps with a tax benefit program similar to Public Act 490, to deed restrict them for 10 years per current state law, so they qualify as legally affordable units. There are now only 6 ADUs that are registered with the building department in the town. There may be many more already in existence, of which the town building department is unaware, as ADUs used to be prohibited. The town should encourage residents to register ADUs with the town now that the ADUs are allowed as of right. Moreover, education about and promotion of this option can dramatically increase units. The state of California has experienced a nearly 20-fold increase in ADUs in the 6 years after it started to promote them. Further, there is currently a bill in the Connecticut State Legislature, HB 7031, that would count an accessory apartment toward the exemption threshold, regardless of whether it is subject to an affordability restriction. If this bill passes, it could dramatically increase Woodbridge's housing diversity without any new market rate construction at all. 2, require all active adult development to include 20% affordable units. I think you all know this, but the folks behind me may not, that unfortunately the Toll Brothers development does not have any affordable units required because the regs do not require it, and that should be changed post-haste. 3, set a minimum number of units above which any multi-unit development must include affordable units. Again, there is a 14 duplex construction underway on Merritt Avenue that has no affordable units. 4, encourage the Board of Selectmen to invite LISC, which is the Local Initiative Support Corporation, to work with other interested parties in identifying and developing affordable housing projects similar to the successful projects in Madison, Barkhamsted, and Kent described in the Housing Committee's panel presentation on April 30th, 2025. And I just want to note that I watched that video of April 30th, and it was really fascinating. I encourage all of you to watch it, including those behind me. The sad thing is, it's what should have happened long ago. It was the beginning of a conversation about what housing needs are in the town, and the experts on that panel actually said it is important for you as a town to decide what is important for you. We have yet to have that conversation. I'm glad that we had the first panel discussion. We need a lot more, and I hope we will have a Town Planning and Zoning Commission and a Board of Selectmen that listens. 5, encourage the Board of Selectmen to develop a means to facilitate eligible individuals to acquire CHFA and USDA mortgages. Most of Connecticut's small towns have more residents using these programs and thus have added legally affordable housing in existing single-family homes without the need for deed restriction. Currently, Woodbridge has only 5 such units in our affordable housing tally, but according to the 2024 Connecticut Affordable Housing Appeals List, Orange has 12, and for example, Woodbury has 37. Now, there's a larger list that's in Appendix D for your of this memorandum. Lastly, I want to address impact. When you scheduled this public hearing, as noted, you asked the town's planning consultant, Mr. Justin LaFountain, to provide, quote, a sense of the impact from going back to the previous regulations, given the path the commission had traveled to get to the existing regulations, end quote. When Mr. LaFountain addressed the TBZ on December 2, 2024, he agreed with the developer that the 15 units per acre, maximum height of 2.5 stories, and 22.5% maximum impervious coverage made construction at 804 Fountain Street impracticable. In other words, he focused on one developer's challenge related to one particular property. That was the record on which TPC's decision relied on December 2. In a memo dated April 29, 2025, Mr. LaFountain offers an unclear but apparently broader statement that the former regulatory requirements are impractical regardless of site restrictions. Site characteristics. He states that, quote, challenges arose from the allowed density of 15 units per acre being difficult to meet while also imposing a 2.5 story limit and a maximum lot coverage of 22.5%, end quote. But let's remember that 15 units per acre is a maximum. It's not a mandatory requirement. So a builder was allowed to build under a less dense project under the then existing regulations, albeit presumably with less profit. There is no data provided either on December 2nd or in the April 29 memo to justify an assumption that the prior regulatory requirements were impractical as a matter of economics. At most, they didn't allow a developer to maximize the profit that the density of 15 units per acre might otherwise have afforded. Further, any quote-unquote impracticality in building 15 units per acre while meeting the 2.5 stories and lot coverage limits begs the question whether the TPC's response was appropriate. Instead of making the combination of requirements less stringent, as you did on December 2, you could have kept the height restriction at the height restriction for nearby homes and reduced the density allowed, the units per acre. This would have aligned better with the regulatory approaches of nearby and similar towns cited in this application and towns where completed projects exist, proving effectiveness. Moreover, why should any changes to the opportunity housing regulations have been made zone-wide? As noted above, other towns have been much more thoughtful in specifying the locations of opportunity housing. There is no discussion of that issue in Mr. LaFountain's memo, perhaps because Woodbridge is an outlier among similar towns on this issue, too. The TPC also had and has the opportunity to pivot and focus on increasing the number of more modest projects that are in scale with the existing neighborhoods, rather than focusing on large apartment buildings that are giants compared to nearby single-family homes. As Mr. LaFountain notes, apartment buildings require hallways, lobbies, elevators, stairwells, etc., not to mention the gym and other amenities that the 804 Fountain Street developer intends to offer, adding both to overall size and to the cost of construction. Perhaps the town should focus not only on lesser density, but specifically the cottage and/or townhouse construction that received more favorable public input in the POCD update process to date. When the TPC adopted the pre-December 2 opportunity housing regulations, it did so in the midst of the COVID pandemic. Then, too, there was a lack of robust public input and profound lack of comparison to other towns' opportunity housing schemes. Should the pre-December regulations really be impractical, that is all the more reason to end this pattern of haphazard regulatory adoption, both then and in December 2nd, and focus instead on a thoughtful, transparent, and deliberate approach to zoning. This application seeks reversion to the pre-December 2 opportunity housing regulations, not because they are the perfect fit for Woodbridge, but simply to avoid further ill-considered four-story apartment projects while TPZ hopefully and finally engages in the robust and collaborative process and analysis that should precede the adoption of opportunity housing regulations. Mr. LaFountain notes that the 804 Fountain Street application will proceed whatever decision the TPC makes this evening. That is not the issue. He tries to minimize the significance of the December 2 regulatory changes by noting that TPZ must weigh several factors before granting a special exception construction permit to the 804 Fountain Street developer. But he fails to note that the excessive height and density and reduced percentage of affordable units is baked into the project by the TPZ's ill-considered adoption of the developer's proposed regulatory changes on December 2, 2024. In lieu of Mr. LaFountain's impact analysis, let's consider the impacts from the public's perspective. Approving this application is your opportunity to honor your obligation as a public agency, to assure that town residents enjoy a meaningful opportunity to hear and comment on proposed changes to zoning regulations. Further, you as an agency will have the opportunity to research and consider the successful opportunity housing regulations of other towns, some of which were presented this evening. You will be able to survey what undeveloped parcels remain in town near existing sewer and water lines that might be developed in accordance with opportunity housing regulations, and look at the topography of those sites in a general sense, rather than rely on the topography of a single site challenged by ledge, slope, and wetlands, as was the case on December 2nd. You will be able to develop updated opportunity housing regulations for all of the zones in the town, so as to create a coherent scheme of regulations across the different zones. You will be able to take into consideration the public's preference in both the TPZ's summer 2024 townwide survey and the Country Club of Woodbridge workshops to date for smaller scale affordable housing options rather than apartment buildings. And you will be able to incorporate the goals and strategies of the new POCD, including smart growth principles. At the December 2, 2024 TPZ meeting, you briefly discussed whether to adopt the developer's proposed changes on a site-specific or zone-wide basis. Town planning consultant Mr. LaFountain favored adopting the developer's proposed changes on a zone-wide basis, but noted that, quote, if there were any issues, you could resolve them later on, end quote. Tonight, you have heard about many issues surrounding the December 2 zone-wide changes, as well as many ideas for a better path forward. Please approve this application to repeal the December 2 regulatory changes with their many, many issues so that you can chart a new path. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. Just to confirm, can you make sure we have a copy of your PowerPoint presentation? I'm not sure.
Sure.
We've
Yes,
received
yes.
that.
Yes, I don't think it had any different information, but the
Understood.
table may be helpful to you. That's the one thing that is not in your document.
Just
But
so
it
we
was
have-
meant to be helpful.
It should be in
I
the
know it
public
was
record.
long, and I wanted folks to be able to follow along to some
No,
extent.
but the presentation should be part of the public record as well.
Fair enough. We'll get that to you.
And for commission members, I do want to hear from our planning consultant as well, but I will offer to, do folks have questions they want to ask of Amy or Morella right now? Or do we want to hear from our planning consultant and then ask them both? I'm agnostic, we can go either way. From Justin, is that okay?
That's okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Justin. If you can introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Justin LaFountain.
Is that microphone on?
Red light's on. So
You're gonna
You have to get
speak up.
closer
They
to
can't
it
hear you.
and,
you got it.
yeah.
My name's Justin LaFountain, Senior Vice President of Planning and Economic Development with Goldman and York. But I'm also the Town of Woodbridge's planning consultant. So I want to thank the commission. I want to thank all the public. I want to thank the presenter tonight. Obviously this is a very heated topic. I think that it probably comes as no surprise. I'm not going to make too many friends tonight, but long and the short of it is, I think the commission made the right decision in December. And I'll go into some reasons as to why.
We do actually need the audience to be quiet during the presentations. You'll have plenty of opportunity to speak at the public hearing portion, so I appreciate you allowing both our presenters, and then we'll have our question and answer session as well. Thank you very much.
So, Woodbridge is kind of at a crossroads right now. of trying to decide what we want to do in terms of housing, opportunities for housing, and in this case, exactly what that is, opportunity housing developments. There are numerous things in my memo that I do want to highlight, but I'm not going to read it verbatim. I'm just going to kind of go over some details from it that I think
This
will help
memo
too.
came out today.
Should have come out last week.
Just say
It
April
was
20.
emailed to you.
Okay, okay, thank you. Yeah.
It's for the records, the memo dated April 29th, 2025, from Justin LaFountain
Yep.
to
Thank
our
you.
TPZ.
Correct. Yep. So the applicant was correct tonight in that the previous regulations that were on record prior to December were really impractical for determining how to develop multifamily housing in Woodbridge. Reason for that, if you look on page 2, there is an analysis that I did that basically concludes that at a maximum, and this is an excessive maximum, with the requirements that were in place, you could have up to a 600 square foot apartment at the 15 units per acre. Standard in the industry right now is about 750 to 800 square feet. And again, the 600 square feet is really not counting things like turnarounds, hallways, elevators, all those things that are going to take up additional room. So what that really entails is a development that would be impractical, financially and per zoning. So I totally understand that the 15 units is a maximum, but the problem with stating a maximum that is not feasible is there's a lot of controversy there. In other words, the town is saying, look, we allow 15 units per acre here. But in reality, because of the other requirements that you put in place, you really don't allow it. You can't do it. It doesn't work. In terms of the financial impacts of the 20% affordable versus 12% affordable, a couple things I want to clear up. It's a 12% if the mix is 60% AMI and 80% AMI. AMI meaning area median income. Some towns do it that way. Some towns do it, across the board 80%. So what the regulations that you adopted in December state is that if you have 80% AMI, you're still required to have that 20%. If you're doing a mix of 60% AMI and 80% AMI, you're allowed to do 12. The nice thing with that is it builds in some additional, more affordable units. 80% AMI is about $90,000 a year, which is still a pretty healthy income in this area. But can you afford a home here? Probably not. So what this did is it hoped to decrease that requirement while allowing additional buildings to be developed that met that and allowed for more people to live here. At that point, I kind of want to go back to the title of this zone, or this type of development in general, which is opportunity housing. I do want to go on record that I agree with all of the suggestions by the applicant in terms of the ADUs, smart growth, everything like that. But Woodbridge is an expensive neighborhood. I think we all know that. The average median income here, I think, is $179,000 a year, which is quite high. And it's difficult for people who want to live here to move in, whether that is young adults who grew up here, they want to stay here, they want to find a home, or aging adults that want to downsize into a smaller unit. It's important to remember that we really don't have that many smaller units in town. We have a lot of single-family homes being the development right next to townhouses that yield the most number of school students, whereas apartments like this is designed for yield the least number of students. So this type of development really decreases the chances of increasing your school population, which I know is a big topic right now, rightfully so. Woodbridge is unique in that the school population is increasing. We have to figure out how to adjust that accordingly. But I think in general, and I'm open to any questions from the commission, but the main thing I think I want to say is that going back to what was is really taking a step backwards. What we have in place now allows for more opportunity. It allows for more development, and it allows for more housing. And a couple things I do want to address in terms of the state statutes. While they do say, they mention about the density, what they also state is that regulations shall encourage opportunity housing and different types of housing availability. I would argue that because you have not had any applications in the past 4 years, it's likely you wouldn't get any. The only reason that you had one recently is because of this zone change. One also important thing to note, this regulation that you have in place right now only applies to Zone A where there is sewer and water. So it doesn't apply throughout all of town. I keep thinking of additional things, but the last thing I'll say, I promise before I move on to questions, is, there are a lot of comments that we're allowing the highest density, the highest height in the lowest density part of town. Technically that's true, but Zone A is about 90% of the town. So it's limited where else you'd be able to put it. And yeah, I did say that back in December, that if issues were found later on, they could be addressed. I'm not sure if there are any issues yet from a planning perspective. Again, any application for a multifamily housing project that comes before you is a special permit. So that means that anybody in the neighborhood that is going to be impacted can speak to it. Your conditions, you have 7 conditions that talk about the size and the location of the proposed use, traffic impacts, everything like that, that could be addressed on a case-by-case basis. What we're doing right now, or what we did in December, was give opportunity for housing, just like the regulations say.
Thank you, Justin. All right, now is the time where I will open it up to our commission members for questions of the applicant or our town planning consultant.
I do have a couple questions. Ms. Morella, can you just please clarify who is the... Speak up, please. Oh. Can you clarify who is the petitioner in this matter? Mr. Mason states he's the applicant, but he has not appeared before the commission and has designated you to serve as the applicant in his absence. And this is just important, not only for establishing standing and transparency, but also so the commission may evaluate any potential personal interests involved in order to prevent unfounded claims of biases or prejudgment and to ensure the integrity of the zoning process.
So it's my understanding that you have listed Mr. Mason as the applicant, and therefore he is the applicant. Mr. Mason had an unexpected health issue, and he looked for somebody else who could come in on his behalf, and I volunteered. And so I'm here not in my personal capacity, I am here as Mr. Mason. I will note that I did support his application. I was aware of his application. I'm listed as one of the supporters, but I am, all of your records show Mr. Mason as the applicant.
Okay, I just, you didn't mention United for Woodbridge, which funded this application. So I just want to make it for the record that this application was, the application fee was paid for United for Woodbridge, which is a political action committee which exists to prevent development of housing in development in town. So I just want to make sure that people in the audience know that this application was, the application fee was paid for by a political action committee. I also wanted to ask, in your application, you referenced undue concentration of population inconsistent with the Connecticut Zoning Enabling Act, Section 8-2. And
What page are you on, please?
I'm looking at the application that was submitted originally by
Mr. Mason's application.
Mr. Mason, February 21.
In February, okay.
Right, so third paragraph, you have December 2nd, revisions should be repealed because among other issues, they permit land use that would create undue concentration of population inconsistent with the Connecticut Zoning Enabling Act. Connecticut General Statute, Section 8-2A. And are you aware that in 2021, the Connecticut General Assembly passed zoning reforms, and that this phase was explicitly removed from the Zoning Enabling Act by Public Act 2129 for reasons of which this application is representative, and could no longer serve as a legal basis for zoning regulations?
I guess I would let the town attorney decide what the law is that applies to this, rather than your representation of it.
Yeah, well, I do have the information that's from our attorneys, Carmody Torrance, who represents us, and they do a, a synopsis of Public Act 2129. So you will find that where it says the requirement to prevent overcrowding and avoiding undue concentration of population has been removed from the Zoning Enabling Act, so.
Well, that's helpful, thank you. May I also ask if you recall the presentation on April 30th, where there was, the panel of experts stated there was substantial latitude of the town to decide what they wanted, and they did not have to build apartment buildings. They did not have to do anything other than what was appropriate for the particular town. And in fact, I think one of the reasons you have so many people here is because Phoebe Plouffe from LISC, who was invited as an expert, specifically said that it's important that projects, quote, aren't a shock to the system, end quote. And again, quote, important to create housing that fits in, end quote. So that's where the goal has not been achieved.
Well, it certainly takes a multifaceted approach, and I think all those approaches, as well as this project, would work well in Woodbridge. But I just wanted to bring that up because it seemed to be a legal basis for the application.
I'm no longer a practicing attorney. I'm not going to weigh in on the law.
Other questions from commission members?
When folks from the public have a chance to speak, Mr. Chairman, after that's done, can we talk to these folks again, or do we just get the one time?
No, this is our time.
Okay.
Once, that we have our public comment session afterwards.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask?
Sure.
So it seems to me that the requirement for a special exception for any future opportunity housing development provides a mechanism for us to sort of carefully consider, the change to the character of the neighborhood in which that development would reside. But it sounds like that sort of provision or protection is not, viewed by the applicant as adequate. Can you just tell me more about that tension?
So Mr. Mason lives across the street from the particular property that started this all. He lives at 815 Fountain Street. My understanding is not perfect about this, but if you've created a regulation that allows 4 stories, that allows a density of 18 units per acre, that allows 30% impervious cover, and a project therefore is going to be submitted with over 180 cars, it's hard for him to then argue that the special exemption permit could be denied based on those very factors of consideration that would say that he would say under the special exception permit, oh no, it doesn't fit into the neighborhood, it doesn't, the number of things that you characterized. So I think you've created probably more than a legal presumption, you've created a very hard hurdle for yourselves to deny a permit under the special exception requirements when you've done, you've made these changes. So that's why I think it's particularly concerning that you did it zone-wide when you were basing it on a particular site that had quite unusual challenges of slope, wetlands, small size. I don't know what will happen with the application. I expect I'll be here in June, and we'll be interested to see what how the process unfolds. But I do think it's significantly different, and I'll leave maybe a lawyer or two in the back to opine more directly with the changes. But I would urge you to ask your town attorney also, because I can't imagine it doesn't make a big difference. My own background is as an environmental attorney, not a zoning attorney. But boy, just basic logic is it's a huge change in the presumption of whether or not somebody's going to get a permit.
Other questions from commission members? So I have two. Well, first I'd like to start by thanking you, Amy, for the presentation and for the significant time and effort on proposals on potential places that we can improve our opportunity housing regulations in general, or ADU units, et cetera. I sort of echo what our planning consultant said, that those are all a suite of good ideas, and they are appreciated as part of your overall package. The first narrow question, and again, apologies, we're juggling a lot of papers here. I will call this the Stephen Mason memo received May 1st. It's dated May 5th, but I think it's referring to today. But it's a memo, I believe, from Stephen Mason and the listed supporters. Would you agree that he says in the first paragraph on the concerns about the process that the legal notice may have been technically given?
Yeah, he did. I think the argument here is not about whether it was technically effective, it was whether it was effective in fact. I mean, I won't go back through the quote here, but I think you all are all appointed, you're all representatives of the people behind me and of the almost 9,000 people who live in Woodbridge. And it should concern you that the public notice didn't actually work. Whether or not you can say in a court of law, oh yeah, we did what we had to do. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it wasn't effective because nobody showed up, as I said. And there's a heck of a lot more people here tonight than there were on December 2nd. So that is the point. It's not about necessarily, I'll leave it to the lawyers if this is appealed, whether they want to argue that question. But I am here tonight to make the point that it was ineffective as a matter of fact. And you ought to care about that.
My second question, and I believe Justin mentioned it, would you agree that what we're talking about here, the changes in Zone A, only apply where there is water and sewer?
Yes, well, that is my understanding, and thank goodness that's the case. But you know, there's a very large piece of property around the corner, which is the Country Club of Woodbridge, which is the subject of substantial discussion in our town, of over 160 acres. And there is water and sewer there. There is also water and sewer up Ansonia Road. There's also, we didn't have time for this presentation, and I actually would urge you to do it because you didn't do it, to look at the number of properties that may currently be developed but are not developed to the limits that are allowed under this new zone. For example, Trinity Evangelical Church has, as I understand it, over 10 acres of extra land. There is Miss Cowson's property on the corner of Center Road and Beecher, which is not actually where, as I understand it, there's both ready sewer and access, but that's a large parcel. And frankly, there's all of the Fitzgerald Tract, which is not protected open space. And as we have seen over time, the folks who are in charge of this town change their minds about what is best for the town. And since it's unprotected and there's potential access to sewer and water along that route or within expansion of it, I think this has a very significant effect. And one of the things I would have liked to have seen is that before you ever did this, and I've been asking for this in town since the original regs were changed in 2021, I've been asking for a build-out analysis to know what the effects potentially would be. And I hope you will ask for that, because now we have a town planner. I don't know what he's been up to in the time that he's been in town, but I certainly hope that one of the things he's urged people to do is to engage in a build-out analysis.
Thank you, Amy. Other questions from commission members? Aaron, you have to get closer to the microphone.
Thank you for the reminder. There's obviously a lot of concern about school capacity
obviously, my kids are at Beecher, so I understand that we're reaching capacity. Is your concern that there's going to be, is the goal to decrease enrollment or increase of capacity? Have you considered that in terms of your,
So personally, I don't have children, never was blessed to have children. Children are not my issue. Mr. Mason moved here as a retired person. I don't think that's his issue. I think what is important, though, is that what is in this application and in this memo is that there was a rush to judgment and an ill-conceived, absent of adequate record, application of a developer's proposal to all of a zone by you all. And I would hope that just as in marriage we sometimes have to admit a mistake, that you all would admit a mistake in what you did. Mr. LaFountain, as Mr. LaFountain notes, the application is already pending for 804 Fountain Street. This is not an effort to stop that at this time. You'll have that process in June. This is an effort to say we can do better as a town. Take the time to listen to the people who are most effective, the ones back here and the 9,000 people in this town, and let them together as this planning panel that finally happened on April 30th started, have a real conversation, which is not only about the housing for opportunity housing, but affordable housing for seniors. There was a mention by Mr. LaFountain about the 20 and 30-year-old segment that might want to move back. I think all of those are valid. Look, I was the former first selectman of town. I know we need to do this. The charter says you're supposed to review the future needs of the town. The same is true for the TPZ. But it didn't happen. What you actually passed was a short-sighted response to a particular developer. And in fairness, Mr. LaFountain, I don't think 4 years for a developer to come in is a sign that this couldn't have happened. It took 20+ years for a developer to put together the package, which is now the land underlying the Toll Brothers development. These things happen slowly. It happened successfully in Orange with their regulations and the other towns that I showed with 20% affordability, et cetera. So it can happen here, but it can be done the right way. Again, I urge you to look at the April 30th panel because the experts in the field there said you don't have to have apartment buildings. You can do what you want. Importantly, the gentleman from the Connecticut Housing, Mr. Santoro, who is a director of a policy office, said, we don't have a shortage of housing. We have a shortage in the state. We have a shortage of housing that's affordable. The only thing that we are subject to in this town is that if we don't have 10% affordable, then we have a different process under 830G. Our focus should be on two things. Number one, doing something about affordable because it's the right thing to do. But we need a more global thing to look at the town. And I honestly don't know who this potential 4 stories with apartments that are 2, potentially 3 bedroom size, who that's supposed to help. I just don't get it. If you're a senior, and my father's 94, you have very different needs from what they've described there. You don't need a grill pit. I mean, this thing is not being developed or a dog walking. This is not being developed for seniors. If we have a senior issue in town, let's sit down and talk about it. I just have to reiterate, all we're asking you to do is blink. We're asking you to pause and to listen to the people who are here. But I don't think that's a lot to ask of public appointees.
Other questions from our commission members? Do we have other questions from our commission members for the applicant or our consultant?
So you've mentioned the number of residents in town. You also mentioned how many people signed on to this application. Can you remind me how many that is?
45.
It's over 40.
Okay.
So listed in the February application.
And how were those folks contacted to be offered the opportunity to sign on?
I don't know. I mean, I was aware that Mr. Mason was engaged in the application process, so I volunteered my name. A few other words. I think there was a lot of upset in town. A lot of people were concerned about what happened, which is indicative of the fact that there was a large number of people who attended the January and February meetings of the Board of Selectmen and Housing Committee, respectively. But I don't know how those names were
I mean,
prepared.
you know, you say a lot, I believe you. It's a subjective term. The number you're citing is 0.5% of
Yes.
the number of residents in town.
And how many people do you usually get at your TPC meetings?
Excuse us.
Please, from the audience,
You're
we-
repeatedly
No, I'm just
citing-
asking. I mean, I think it's significant compared to what you usually receive.
Yes, and you're repeatedly citing a number 9,000 as sort of being the party in play here, and also you have 45 signatures to support
Yes.
this particular application.
Well, my goal is actually to ensure that everybody in town has a chance to speak. Obviously, of the 9,000 or so people, some of those are kids, minors. They may be preoccupied with other things. Some of them include my father, who's 94 and is down in a community assisted living. But I'm just trying to point out that there are a lot of people in town who might be interested if they had an opportunity to really be engaged. I don't know the answer, but I do know that when I was first selectman, I said that I had 9,000 bosses. And frankly, I think you all have a lot of bosses too.
Does the applicant feel that by virtue of what's happening right now that they have been heard? So even if it was a situation where there was legal notice that was proper, you mean if in fact that it didn't happen, that there was enough vetting of this and discussion, wouldn't you say it's happening now?
No, because you already have changed the regulations. I'll only consider it be heard if you actually approve this application. Otherwise, it was a missed opportunity that has not been remedied. So. If
Any
I could,
remaining-
Mr. Klee, if there aren't any more questions from the applicant, it's my, from the TPC members, it's my understanding that I have an opportunity to ask as the, in the place of the applicant, to ask a couple of questions of Mr. LaFountain, the planner.
Sure.
I have one more question.
Sure. Sorry.
In your view, what would have been sort of appropriate or adequate notice, in fact?
So what I think you could have done, which would have been much better, is to do what you did in July of 2024 and continue the public hearing. At which point, I think the buzz would have gotten out in town. You could have had a meeting again in January, which would have been after the holidays of multiple kinds, which occur in late November through December. And at that point, somebody might have known what was going on. And there would have been more opportunity for people to speak up, not just the applicant. So you could have continued it. You didn't. I mean, look, I'm sympathetic to the fact that you had been having discussions with the developer, but you need to understand that there's no obligation on the part of the people in town to listen to any of that, to be aware of any of that. You need to have a public hearing, and then the record starts anew, and the people have an opportunity to come in. And I'm really frankly astonished that it didn't get continued. And I wish it had been. I would have been here in January.
What criterion would have indicated that there should be a continuation of the public hearing?
First of all, that you decided it would be zone-wide. Second of all, that I think you all have quite a bit of awareness that housing issues are controversial in this town. So if you, and just past precedent, you had Scrivener's errors that you were fixing in your regulations and you continued a public hearing for multiple months. I don't know why you didn't do that here.
For the record, we had a specific request to continue the hearing, and perhaps that's well, I'll ask it so not to put words in his mouth. Without a request to continue or the hearing, how would we have known that that was something that was in the public's interest?
I think you could have been surprised that nobody was here when you were proposing to increase height to 4 stories.
But again, Amy, which is why I asked the question. We did follow all of our standard noticing procedures, which when we do notice our public hearings, we usually get people do show up. So
But with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, the opportunity is before you now. You have the public here. The opportunity, as I said, is to blink and to take the time to go ahead and go back to the old regs. Not that because they were perfect, but because it restores the status quo so you can do this the right way. You can look at Orange, multiple towns. You can direct the planner to look at those multiple towns where there is actually been development of opportunity housing. And figure out by looking what's right for Woodbridge, but by comparing it to other towns. Not have a record that is based on a developer coming forward, clearly for his own financial advantage. I mean, he's in it for the money, right? And then say, okay, we'll do it zone-wide, and then refuse with all these people here and those who have submitted comments to reconsider. I just think it's, as I said, I think it's restoring the status quo so you can do something on a more thoughtful basis.
other questions? I do want to give you the opportunity to ask questions, and I know we have lots of people behind you who want to have their 3 minutes at the lectern.
So, Mr. LaFountain, just a couple of things.
Is your microphone on?
Yep, you should be good.
The red light?
Red light, yep.
Thank you.
First of all, it is my understanding, having watched the video, that you were the panelist on April 30th.
The
Housing
moderator.
Committee? The
Yeah.
moderator? Okay, thank you. And at that time, you said all the people who appeared, you said, quote, all experts all are experts in their fields. Does that sound right to you? The four who showed up? I'm not going to quote you, but do you think they were all experts in their fields?
I absolutely do. This line of questioning is a little unusual.
Yeah,
in the sense,
That feels like interrogation.
Yeah, well, I
Amy,
mean,
I would prefer that you focus on the memo that he submitted for our, that's what I thought you meant when you said you wanted to ask questions of our planning consultant who submitted a memo pertaining to the application we have in front of us. I'd love for you to keep the
well,
questions.
okay, so I think the question,
Yeah, there is nothing about the meeting on the 30th in this record.
I did mention it, but okay, fair enough. I do just have one question. In preparing your memo, did you look at the other town, any other towns in town? Did you make recommendations to the TBZ on December 2nd based on looking at other towns? Because there's nothing in the record to indicate that.
yeah, so being in my position, I am always sort of in tune with what's going on in a variety of towns in Connecticut. I do think, I think you mentioned Guilford on your slide. No? So Guilford has some opportunity housing that is up to 20
Oh,
units
maybe
per
I
acre.
did, maybe Guilford was there, I'm sorry, but Orange as
Yeah.
well, yeah,
So-
I'm sorry.
So Guilford, I think, was a little incorrect in your presentation. They do allow up to 20 units per acre in some situations, so,
Again, from the audience, please.
but yes, I always look into other towns, absolutely.
Well, I think it would have been helpful for this memo here, that if you had actually looked at other towns, and I certainly hope that going forward, that will be part of the process, that this Town Plan and Zoning Commission always asks what's going on in other towns. That is why we are asking you to take another look, because at least with respect to whatever knowledge Mr. LaFountain has or any directives you can give him, you would be benefited from specifically understanding what the regulatory structures are in other places. And in the interest of other people commenting, I won't go further. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Our consultant, I guess, since I offered to the applicant, any last words from you?
No, nothing to add.
Thank you. Alrighty, so if,
2-minute break, Mr. Chairman.
can we take it? Yes, it looks like we have a request for a 2-minute break while we
Readjust.
readjust.
Thank you.
Thank you. on a commissioner. Start reading. So, in advance of having our public hearing portion, I do want to note the correspondence that we have received for our May 5th zoning amendment hearing. And I'm going to be reading through a long list, so I appreciate your patience with this. Note that all of those written comments shall be posted on the website because they've all been received and scanned. And to the extent that anyone requested that their letter be read out loud, that's not our usual practice, but note that they've all been distributed to all of our commission members, and we all have them in our possession. The one that I don't, with the two editions of this January 10th, this one's not on the list, right?
That one is not on the
Okay.
list, no.
So I will add to the list that aren't there. We will receive the PowerPoint presentation that was presented by Amy Morella during the meeting. We also received, during the meeting, a memo from Kathy Wick and Amy Morella dated January 10th, 2024 to the Board of Selectmen. We have also received an email from Stephen Mason dated Monday, March 10th, 2025. We received a copy of a letter dated March 12th, 2025 with attachments filed with the Woodbridge Town Clerk of the proposed zoning amendment in advance of the public hearing on May 5th, 2025. We received staff comments dated March 14th, 2025 from the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments in response to a referral request regarding the subject application. We received an email dated March 17, 2025 to Justin LaFountain, planner with Gorman and York, requesting input regarding this subject application and his attendance at the May 5th, 2025 public hearing. We received a letter dated March 28, 2025 to Stephen Mason with requested information for the May 5th, 2025 public hearing. We received an email dated April 15, 2025 from Karen Sklarz. We received comments dated April 14, 2025 from the South Central Regional Council of Governments in response to a referral request regarding the subject application. We received comments dated April 29, 2025 from Justin LaFountain, planner with Gorman and York. We received a letter dated May 1st, 2025 from Stephen Mason, designating Amy Morella as his agent to serve as the applicant, as he will be unable to attend the public hearing to present his application. We received a letter dated May 5th, 2025, stamped as received May 1st, 2025 from Stephen Mason, and listed supporters of the subject application. We received an email dated May 3rd, 2025 from Carol Rosen, 14 Clark Road, Woodbridge. We received an email dated May 3rd, 2025 from Lydia Fazio Thace, 23 Cedar Acres Road, Woodbridge. Apologies for any mispronunciations of people's names. We received an email dated May 3rd, 2025 from Lawrence Marks, 48 Maple Vale Drive in Woodbridge. We received an email dated May 3rd, 2025 from David Lober. We received an email dated May 3rd, 2025 from Jed Sosnowitz. We received an email dated May 4th, 2025 from Kathleen Cords, Briarwood Drive, Woodbridge. We received an email dated May 4th, 2025 from Ann Hurley, 301 Old Amity Road, Woodbridge. We received an email dated May 4th, 2025 from Virginia A. Hurley at 301 Old Amity Road, Woodbridge. We received an email dated May 4th, 2025 from John Thies, 23 Cedar Acres Road, Woodbridge. We received a letter dated May 5th, 2025 from Amy W. Morella. We received a letter dated May 5th, 2025 from Peter B. Cooper. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Andrew M. Esposito Jr., 3 Woodside Drive, Woodbridge. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Cynthia Anger, 935 Greenway Road, Woodbridge. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from David T. Jensen, 46 Newton Road, Woodbridge. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Bruce Torello, 14 Oxbow Lane, Woodbridge. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Gary H. Wickfors, 104 Seymour Road, Woodbridge. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Susan Israel, 18 Carriage Hill Road, Woodbridge. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Liz Chicos. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Deborah and Brian Pines, 50 Hickory Road, Woodbridge. We received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Tim Austin, 183 Ansonia Road, Woodbridge. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Elizabeth Whitfors, 104 Semo Road, Woodbridge. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Peter and Melissa Giatrellis. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Laura Dane. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Basil and Susan Anton, 11 Bond Road, Woodbridge. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Rob Rosasco from 6 Westward Road, Woodbridge. Received a letter dated May 5th, 2025 from Diana Palmieri, 89 Peck Hill Road, Woodbridge. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Joseph Tontini, 6 Manila Avenue, Woodbridge. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Devin Puglisi DeMilo. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Beverly Tontini, 6 Manila Avenue, Woodbridge. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Maz Zanuski of 1065 Johnson Road, Woodbridge. Received an email and a letter dated May 5th, 2025 from Nancy V. Clark, 46 Rimmon Road, Woodbridge. Received an email and letter dated May 5th, 2025 from Jim and Diane Urbano, 52 North Pease Road, Woodbridge. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Brett Calistro, 838 Fountain Street, Woodbridge. Received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from an unknown sender. And we received an email dated May 5th, 2025 from Marie and Raymond Dubé. All right, with that list of the written correspondence that is now part of the record for this zoning amendment hearing, I'd now like to move to the public hearing portion for this application by Stephen Mason for amendment to the zoning regulations, specifically to repeal in its entirety the amendments to section 3.2, the opportunity housing that were enacted on December 2nd, 2024, to replace them with the regulations in place before the December 2nd, 2024 amendment. The public hearing is for purpose of listening to your comments. You'll each have up to 3 minutes for your brief statements into the record, and I will hold you to when the bell goes off, I will ask you to please wrap up succinctly so we can get to all of your comments this evening. The TBZ members and the applicants will not be answering any questions you raise. Your public statements and any written comments that were submitted to the town will be part of the public record for the TBZ's consideration of this application. As a reminder to everyone, off-the-record communication with a member of the commission on the merits of this application is prohibited. Please keep your comments brief and focused on the proposed zoning amendment, and try to avoid unreasonable repetition so we can hear all the concerns that you and your neighbors may have. So I ask that those who want to come forward and give a public comment, Chris, we have sign-in sheets. Sign in and state your name, and when you've stated your name, I will start your 3 minutes. And yes, the microphone's now open.
And I would just ask, can you please print your name? I don't need a signature. I can't read your writing, and it's not because I don't know cursive.
Yes, so print clearly and legibly for the record. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Chris, a question, should we pass that around as to make things move quicker, or maybe have the sign up?
She's going to offer to pass it around, so then you'll just have to know when you signed next, okay?
Thank you.
I appreciate this opportunity. My name is Donna Lee Anderson, and I live on 11 Brookside Drive, which is just a few blocks from the property that has been topic of some of this discussion. I'm not only a neighbor to the area, but I'm also, I have a master's degree in architecture from the School of Community Design, and I feel I have some expertise on some of the topics. If I had had the opportunity in December to speak, I would have talked about the height of the building, and it's just inappropriate for the density that exists already in the neighborhood. That's about all I want to say.
Speak up, please.
Oh, okay.
We're hearing you fine up here.
Okay. I'll leave it at that. I just wish I'd had more opportunity to speak as a member of the adjacent neighborhood. I'll let somebody else speak.
Thank you for your comment.
I have it timed to 3 minutes. You don't have to cut me off today, promise. Rachel Guerra, Woodbridge resident, not a member of a political action committee, unaffiliated for quite some time, and I don't give anyone money, except for the town of Woodbridge. I want to thank this group for your time today. I know this is a lot to listen to, and we appreciate you hearing us. I want to especially want to thank Mr. Mason. I've never met him, but for giving us a voice. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had one, and no one would have cared. And for making the investment of time to help us correct a wrong that occurred on December 2nd. On that day, the TPZ swiftly voted to make a significant change, welcoming a type of development that many, including myself, believe would be disastrous and severely impact the residents of this town. There's no doubt about it. The decision to reverse this change is essential. It ensures that we are inclusive in major decisions and consider the input of the families and the residents and the people behind me. This is an opportunity for all of us to integrate the work of the consultants that we spend a lot of money on, the feedback from countless stakeholders, and ensure that the plan of conservation and development, known as the POCD, reflects the views of our leaders and our residents. Thoughtful planning will create lasting opportunities that better serve our community for generations. By prioritizing our community's needs, we ensure our actions benefit those who live here, making our area more attractive to new residents. With the right resources, school support, staff, enhanced safety measures, proper fire resources, equipment that they'll need for this type of development, and alignment with our conservation goals, we can build a thriving and sustainable Woodbridge for everybody. This emphasis on housing, especially from the December 2nd discussion, seemed to lack the consideration of the residents and environmental and conservation concerns that this presents. I heard more passionate discussion about a group home in a residential area just last month than this major change. We trust you to do what is right for our town, our residents, and to make sure that nothing gets compromised or lost. Holding a meeting or posting a meeting on a holiday weekend and then holding a public hearing on the Monday after a holiday week is extremely shameful. Without the proper education and a final POCD, I will finish, sends the wrong message. We can build housing, but must avoid the bad decisions that will ultimately affect our tax bills, our mill rate, our schools, and our services. As I told the Board of Selectmen in January, the notification of this event was published in a low readership newspaper on Thanksgiving morning. There was no notice for working families to respond accordingly. This alone is enough to restart the process. And the feedback from consultants again shows clearly that this is not the type of housing we've asked for. The town isn't ready for this. We need to do what's right. We can't afford to do a 96-unit apartment building, and I'm sure the residents in the area will agree. And I urge this leadership, I'm wrapping it up, to closely examine the integrity of your process, the reasonings behind it, and assess your current process, and continue to remain collaborative, smart, and do the right type of town planning that's driven by a shared purpose. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who is next on the sign-up sheet? Does anyone know who's next?
Hi, I'm Donald Solano, 3 Knollwood Road. For 8 years, from 2001 to 2009, I sat right there where Chairman Clee sits.
Can you please come closer to the microphone?
Query, I know you can't answer my questions, but I wonder how many emails you got prior to your December 2nd meeting from concerned citizens who who were aware of that meeting and what its import was? Be nice to know. I bet you got none. Sir, you said we're at a crossroads. We follow your road, we're going to go right off a cliff. And ma'am, you are so impossibly and hopelessly compromised with your prejudgment and prejudice to this application that your mere physical presence taints the members, affects the freedom of action of your members, fellow members here, and contaminates the process and just further makes us mistrustful of the whole operation here. On December 2nd, not only was there not an emergency, you had a patient who wasn't even sick. Instead, notwithstanding that, you undertook to apply electroshock and conduct radical, intrusive, disfiguring, and even mutilating surgery. The new application gives you a pathway to coherent, sensible, rational, cohesive, careful planning. You have here the opportunity for redress, reformation, restoration, and respect. Don't blow it. Do no more harm.
Thank you for your comments. I ask that whoever is next on the list, please come forward. That was just Donald Salato, whoever is after Donald. Yeah, so actually we do need, can we bring
just
the
have
list
the list back up?
up to the front then, sorry.
No, it's just easier to have people sign in. This is not working.
Because I don't
Where
want
is
folks
the list?
skip.
Or I can start reading them. So we skipped a couple of people.
So let's go back to the list in the order that it was, please.
So we had Donnelly Anderson. We had someone from Peck Hill, Lou House. Did you get? Oh, I'm just trying to look at this. I can't. Rachel just spoke. Joy.
We have to pass the list back to the council so we can sign up because
We're gonna, once you get through this list, you will come up and sign in, just like we normally do.
My name is Joy Prudhomme. I'm at 21 Barberry Lane, and I'm going to be very brief. I just want to acknowledge that I'm not part of a PAC, and I know there were a lot of names on the application, but I just want to state that I am absolutely 100% in agreement with everything that was presented. I also, just want to point out that this process has been really worrisome. I've been in the town for over a decade, very involved, and I'm very troubled by kind of the lack of the democratic process and total disregard for the will of the people of Woodbridge. I see, no disrespect, Justin, but people from outside of Woodbridge coming in and kind of telling us what we should be doing. And quite honestly, we don't have to do anything. And I also know that there, are people sitting right here on your group tonight, that one particular person in general that, you know, is really determined to drive a certain outcome. And it's really unfortunate because it is an election year. There were 40 names on that group, and I know you mentioned a PAC and whatever the heck that means, but I can tell you, I talk to a lot of people, I know a lot of people in town, and they're very upset. And it's an election year, and people will let you know. They might not all be here tonight, but there are going to be a lot of people that will make sure that anybody who is up for re-election will not, if they're attached to this. So I just want to caution you to, you know, take a break, take a moment, really consider what you're doing, because the implications of it are far-reaching. And I think it's irresponsible, especially when you're not considering the will of the people of the town that pay the taxes and live here now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Al Smith?
Good evening. My name is Al Smith, 17 Ansonia Road. I want to focus on, first I want to focus on one of the aspects of Amy Morella's comments. The record is clear that the December 2 amendments were enacted to ensure the maximum development potential and profitability of a single physically constrained site. Tailoring regulations that affect a significant portion of the town to benefit a single site is, to be charitable, a reaction. It is an accommodation. It is a very generous accommodation, but it is not planning. This desire to accommodate the 804 Fountain Street site is illustrated by some of the strained logic and flawed analysis used to justify the adoption of the regulations. Here's one example from the December 2nd hearing. At around the 35-minute mark in the videotape, there was a question from one of the commissioners about whether the use of incentive housing zones, as opposed to opportunity housing zones, could be used to justify an even greater density than proposed. Incentive housing allows 20 units per acre, and the December 2nd amendments provide for 18 units per acre. In response, Mr. LaFountain stated that incentive housing zones were designed for larger cities and not for Woodbridge. Yet, Mr. LaFountain's April 29 memo concerning this application, the higher density provisions of the incentive housing zones were used to demonstrate compliance with a provision of the Connecticut Zoning Enabling Act, which may or may not be in force as we speak today, that the regs must not result in an undue concentration of population. Well, which is it? If incentive housing density does not apply to Woodbridge, how can it be used to demonstrate compliance with as a benchmark to show compliance with state laws? A rhetorical question. Can you have it both ways? Finally, on December 2nd, there was a discussion about the effect that any problems encountered in the new regulations could be, quote, cleaned up. Well, there are problems, and now is the opportunity to clean them up. I would note, obviously there's been a lot of information presented this evening in the record, many emails. I expect there will be many more speakers. Ask you to consider them carefully, not to rush to judgment to try to dispose of this application as soon as you can. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
And Jane.
So there's still names on that list?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Adrian Michi Smith. I have a loud voice generally, so I probably don't even need this. I live at 17 Ansonia Road, and I am reading a letter from Cynthia Anger, who's not here, on her behalf about this particular amendment. To whom it may concern, I am writing in support of the above referenced application meaning Mr. Mason's, application. Increasing Woodbridge's housing supply is a laudable goal, but the December 2nd, 2024 changes to the zoning regulations are sweeping and ill-conceived. Although it may be easier to enact regulations proposed by individual developers to suit their needs, the TPZ abdicates its role in advancing responsible town-wide development when it fails to look beyond such proposals. Moreover, the Commission delegitimized the planning and zoning process when it enacted controversial regulations during the holiday season, as it did in December. This, combined with the obvious bias of board members who are also housing advocates, cannot be construed as anything other than an attempt to quell dissent. If the Commission truly wishes to engage the community in a meaningful discussion about affordable housing, it should approve the Mason application and do the hard work of comprehensive planning. Please include my comments in the official record on this application. Very truly, Cynthia Anger, 935 Greenway Road, Woodbridge. I would like to add that I also agree with Mr. Mason's application, and I agree with Ms. Anger's remarks. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
We'll just note for the record that that was one of the emails that was received, and it has been distributed to all the members.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. Carla Wheel?
Hi, Carla Weil. I live at 1144 Racebrook Road, so I've lived in Woodbridge for 18 years. I live next door to the Milford Side Cemetery, so I live next to some of the oldest Woodbridge residents. That's the only laugh line I'm going to get, because I have to say that I agree with the town planner, and I believe we should keep the regulation as approved on December 2nd. I applaud the professionalism of the board in making a brave decision at that time. I've been involved in affordable housing, so I guess I'm biased for that. Since 1989, I have financed affordable housing developments throughout the state. I've seen the need for the kind of housing that we're talking about, and I've seen many generous, spirited towns, like Guilford, in fact, and others who have made the decision to support this kind of housing. I heard that, I was at the April 30th meeting that was referenced, and I heard them talking about we need to do what the town wants. And there's an element of truth to that, and of course we have to listen to what the town wants. However, there are other facts that speak to me, and the fact that no applications have been filed in the past 4 years for affordable housing development tells me that we were not open and not welcoming to affordable housing. So the process that brought about the December 2nd decision may not have been perfect, and there may need to be adjustments. But the fact that after that, that resulted in an application that actually would create affordable housing, and I appreciate that the 12% targets lower income housing, which is the hardest kind of housing to produce. The town residents, I also feel, in my time here, we have had many opportunities to hear from people about what they want about housing. And in general, what I hear, and maybe I'm misinterpreting, but what I've consistently heard is no affordable housing. And there have been calls tonight for considered development of plans, but we've had many years through which we could do that, and I haven't seen it result in any outcomes that have produced housing. I think back to the purchase of the golf course, which was purchased because somebody was going to do something that could be conceived of as a smart growth plan, where there was development in the center of the property and the balance of it would have been kept as open space. So it makes me sad to, as we look at Woodbridge, we could be the leader in the area. And instead, we're looking to see that we're not doing more than, or that we're only doing what the others around us have done. So I appreciate everybody's opinions. I know people feel passionately about this, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak here tonight, and the work that you do, and the work of the people behind me, and their passion as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Sharon DeCott?
Sharon DeCott, 94 Center Road. Just before I came here, I thought I'd just check into the population and how it's grown. And so what I found is that New Haven from 2010 to 2025 grew by 6,000 people. I went to AI, it may not be the best source. Woodbridge actually decreased by 40 people. Connecticut increased by 45,000 people. New Haven County decreased by 6,000. So, though I appreciate what the person said beforehand, I think it is true that we now understand that we need affordable housing and housing for young people who are in the 20s and 30s. I don't think that the present regulation changes is really supporting that. Getting 12%, it really actually decreases the percentage of affordable housing compared to the total housing stock. And I think a targeted only senior housing or only affordable housing would be a much wiser decision. And I want to just comment on my experience of realizing I'm wrong and going backwards, and it's a very hard thing to do. It's not an easy thing for you guys to do, and I imagine that it would take a lot of fortitude and strength and revamping, and I encourage you to really take that under consideration, because all of us make decisions that may not have all the information that we need. And if you guys were willing to do that, I think the respect from numerous town members would be laudable, and it would help us reinvest in our excitement about how the town can be a better place for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Carol?
In response to this.
And I'm sorry, could you still introduce yourself?
Carol Levarek, again. The zoning change enacted on December 2nd, 2024 appears to have been made for the purpose of this one developer. That is very, very concerning to me. The developer requested this change so a 4-story apartment building could be built at 804 Fountain Street. This request should have gone to the Zoning Board of Appeals, not to the Town Zoning and Planning Commission. The TPZ should have rejected the request and referred the developer to the ZBA. If that had happened, we would not be sitting here tonight necessarily. This change allows for 4-story housing units to be built in any residential A zoned area that has public water supply and sewers. This change in building height exceeds that of the commercially zoned areas in town. This change has future implications if for some reason public water supply and sewers are added to other streets. I'm not opposed to building apartments if and only if the zoning change on December 2nd is reversed. This is brought before the Zoning Board of Appeals for discussion and thoughtful, logical planning. A traffic study is done, and if this helps the town meet the affordable housing requirements and relieves the town of the current lawsuit regarding affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Kathy Wick?
Kathy Wick, I live on Rimmon Road. I'd like to start by thanking Kathy Hunter, the chair of the Housing Committee, for arranging the Housing Forum last Wednesday. I believe Ms. Hunter was the only member of this body in attendance at the forum. It's unfortunate because the speakers made some very important points that are relevant to tonight's proceedings. I'm going to discuss just 2 of my takeaways from that meeting. First, Mr. Michael Santoro, the Director, Office of Policy Research and Housing Support, Connecticut Department of Housing, long title, completely debunked the radical rhetoric that's being pushed by housing advocates, including some Woodbridge town officials. It turns out their claim that Connecticut has a housing supply crisis and needs to build tens of thousands of new homes is simply not true. He said, and I quote, "I'm sure you've seen in the papers people talk about we need 110,000 or 120,000 housing units. I will tell you right now that is a false statement. What we have in Connecticut right now are about 120,000 people who are paying more than they should for housing. We don't need to build 110,000 or 120,000 units. We need to help those families be able to afford where they are living." Let that sink in for a moment. Mr. Santoro is saying that the basis of the statewide push to build, baby, build, if you will, the basis of the sweeping radical changes that were made to our zoning in the past couple of years is a lie. Mr. Santoro went on to say, "We are here to help. We don't want to tell you what to do. We don't tell you that you have to do anything." The state of Connecticut doesn't tell us that we have to do anything. In other words, the law does not require us to do anything, so let's remember that. Next, Ms. Phoebe Plouffe from LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation, spoke. She said, "It's important that the projects you are developing are not a shock to the system to people, or a stark difference from the existing housing stock in the area. It's important that you create housing that is fitting in, where you can drive by and not even notice. This is important not only for those who are in the community already, but also for those who move into that housing who might not want to get negative attention, who want to live in housing that looks just like the housing that already exists." Certainly, the attendance in this room tonight indicates that the December 2nd zoning changes that we seek to reverse are exactly what Ms. Plouffe was warning against, a shock to the system. The artist's rendering of the 804 Fountain Street building makes it obvious that it will loom over the town. You could never drive by and fail to notice it. It's huge and totally out of scale with the surrounding area, including down the street in the city of New Haven, where this building could not be built. By contrast, the multiple recommendations in the presentation you heard earlier are perfectly aligned with the advice of these experts. I urge you to take a step back. And referencing something Mr. LaFountain said, taking a step back in order to take 2 steps forward is what's being proposed here. Not take a step back and stay there, but take that step back so that you can move forward in a more appropriate way. I suggest you focus on the business district where infill and mixed-use housing development can stimulate business growth. If you engage in a thoughtful, transparent process with robust public input, I believe you can chart a path forward that the majority of townspeople can and will support. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Bonnie Blake.
Bonnie Blake, 64 Beecher Road. In order to not have us here till 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm not going to keep it short and not repeat what's been said. So let me just say that zoning regulations are there to protect all residents of a town. And any significant zoning changes should be publicly presented to town residents so that they may have input in it. It should not be made by a small few. And any significant zoning changes like this should be made to only be done in such a way to benefit the majority of residents. This does not. This change, this dramatic change, benefits a developer. It doesn't benefit the rest of us, and it's actually harmful to our property values, our way of life. We have a right when we buy into town to expect that the zoning regulations in existence will be respected. Beecher Road is in that zone. 3 of the oldest houses in this town, the oldest, built in the 1700s, are on Beecher Road. I don't think it would be appropriate to have a high-rise building next to those houses. Please reconsider. We'd appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments.
Steve Lawrence. Did I say it right?
Yes. I'm glad you could read that. Even printing, I thought it's going to be a challenge.
It's not as bad as my brother's, right?
Okay. I'm Stephen Lawrence. I live at 44 Old Quarry Road. Woodbridge is a special place with abundant natural beauty, which I and my family enjoy, appreciate, and want to sustain as much as anyone in town. Woodbridge is also a place with high property taxes that have gotten much higher for many of us, as our property tax burden is redistributed due to the state-mandated reassessment. My hope as a taxpayer is that town leaders will do everything they possibly can to find more ways to generate revenue. This includes supporting multi-unit housing that will attract more young professionals to town and provide a place where older, long-time Woodbridge residents will choose to stay. Per acre, this type of housing will generate far, far more property taxes than will another house on a big lot. The other thing having more young professionals and older adults in town will do is to create the customer base needed to sustain more businesses here in town. I'll tell you my dream. It's to have an awesome coffee shop, maybe an ice cream parlor and pizza place up here on the hill 5 minutes from my house, where I can run out and meet people for cappuccino and Danish or take the kids for a treat and bump into my neighbors and feel a sense of connection with my community. Folks working from home like me alone will not sustain those kinds of businesses, as the empty storefronts in the business district prove. Of equal importance from my perspective, having multi-unit housing in a couple of places in town will in no way diminish the overwhelming beauty of Woodbridge or our unique personal quality of life. Well over a third of our town is protected or not able to be developed. We are unique and exceptionally blessed. Ensuring regulations are in place to make a few acres of private property or town-owned land economically viable for multi-unit housing to be able to ensure our continued collective prosperity as a community seems to me to be an ideal way to ensure the best possible future for Woodbridge. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Do you want to submit that? Is that okay? Thank you so much. Thank you. Martha German.
Good evening. I'm Martha German, and I live at 1170 Johnson Road. I have a very quick comment that reiterates things that have been said by a number of other people tonight, starting with Amy Morella. I'm here tonight to urge the members of the TPZ to return the regulations for Zone A opportunity housing to their status before December 2nd, 2024. While I understand that next month's hearing will be the time to address the 804 Fountain Street development proposal, Mr. Malisi's first proposal and requests appear to have been the impetus for your changes on December 2nd. These bizarrely extreme zoning changes allowing 4 stories instead of 2.5 max, 18 units per acre instead of 15, maximum lot coverage of 22.5 to become 30, and the affordable change from 20% to 12% were apparently tailored to suit the developer's request. Why? He could have worked with the previous regulations or gone elsewhere. And why would you offer up these site-specific changes to all comers? These new regulations do not make sense as part of a wise, comprehensive plan for the town. Therefore, I sincerely ask you to return to the pre-December 2nd regulations and invite resident input on future zoning changes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Barbara Hagan.
Good evening, Barbara Hagan Smith, 116 Northrop Road. I'm here to read a letter on behalf of Diana.
Can you get a little closer to the
Sorry.
microphone? Thank you.
I'm here to read a letter on behalf of Diana McCarthy Berkery, who could not be here tonight. Good evening. Thank you for having this public hearing to receive the valuable input of our community. On behalf of the Conservation Commission, I would like to present information in support of the application in front of you. We support the reversal of the TPZ change to increase the amount of impervious surface from 22.5% up to 30%. There are environmental impacts from impervious surface such as, but not limited to increase of groundwater pollution from stormwater runoff. As you increase impervious surfaces, so too do you increase the contaminants that are picked up and moved by water runoff. It is often hard to see the direct effect from stormwater runoff, but look around now in the spring where grass does not grow due to pollution like salt on roads. You can visually observe the brownish and dead areas along where the streets meet the lawns. Additionally, runoff is a major source of pollutants entering our watersheds, which feed water supplies in neighboring communities. Another impact is that it will not allow replenishing of our groundwater supply. Impervious surface also acts as a shield, obstructing water from returning to groundwater supplies. This is important for many of us on well water who all share this natural resource. 2, another concern is planning for densely populated structures at the locations without public transportation. The changes enacted on December 2nd encourage developers and provide an opportunity, quote unquote, to build without considering access to public transportation and would require the use of personal vehicles that people must rely on without having proper access to public transportation. As a result of increasing the stories, allowed, you increase the potential population significantly and the personal use of vehicles which create dense gatherings or release of emission and increasing air pollution. There are other concerns such as light pollution and noise pollution that development pose to the environment and surrounding habitats and more. The Woodbridge Conservation Commission would like to request time on your next agenda to provide conservation integrated strategies and information. We welcome the opportunity to collaborate with you as you consider planning and zoning changes for our town so that together we can limit harm to the environment and to the public health. Sincerely, Diana Berkery.
Thank you. Please be sure to submit that if it's a written comment. Thank you.
Robert McLean.
Good evening. Robert McLean, Ribbon Road. I moved to this town more than 25 years ago, and the appeal of this town was what is shared by all in this room. Open space, rural feel, good schools, proximity to New Haven. That is why we are here. Woodbridge is a town that has always seemed to know what it was trying to be, a residential community. And historically, this town's government and zoning has maintained that. So what is going on here? I am like many residents of this town, busy with work and raising kids and taking for granted that we trust the town government and zoning regulations to continue how this town functions and feels as a community. So making big changes without explicit public awareness and agreement is a violation of the trust of this community. This is clearly what has recently happened. I believe most town residents agree with the goal to create more affordable and diverse housing, and we can do this without overwhelming Woodbridge's infrastructure or creating an undue concentration of housing units, as would be quite possible with these new zoning changes. Take a step back and think about the implications, as others have said. Raising building heights from 2.5 to 4 stories, thereby allowing apartment buildings in Woodbridge in the residential zone. I think we can all envision developers in the shadows with dollar signs in their eyes. This process needs a reboot. The Town Plan and Zoning Commission can achieve the goals of more affordable and diverse housing in our town, but we must first avert potential problems. I urge the Commission to revert back to the previous zoning regulations now and then pursue a more public and transparent process to achieve the nuanced solutions that are needed to achieve those goals. The process that has occurred is not characteristic of our town. The lack of transparency and disinformation around these zoning issues is something I would expect from the current authoritarian administration in Washington, D.C., but not from our Woodbridge small-town government. It is remarkably ironic, dare I say deceptive, that the Democratic Town Committee just yesterday declared its intent to, quote, combat misinformation in Woodbridge, unquote, because many citizens want to transparently inform others about efforts to promote dense development in our low-density zone and change zoning regulations under cover of darkness to achieve those ends. Wow. I think that has in recent times been called gaslighting. It's a good movie from 1944, and I would suggest that you check it out. Thank you.
So now you are welcome to come and sign in on your own sheet, but just print.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ben Carlson, 89 Central Road. So I'd like to start by thanking all of you for your service and giving us the opportunity to speak. It's a late night, and it seems like it's going to be a lot later, so I appreciate it. So I don't usually give out my credentials, but they seem relevant here. So I have a master's in environmental management from Duke and a PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology from Yale. So we live in a rapidly changing world. We get constant reminders of this fact. For example, a recent high-profile study in the prestigious journal Science showed that butterfly populations have declined by 33% in the Northeast. Nationwide, 22 butterfly species have decreased by more than 90%. This is just one of the many examples showing how difficult it is for plants and animals to live in an increasingly human-dominated world. The most significant driver of biodiversity loss is land use change. This means converting something like a forest to something else, like an apartment complex. This is because land use change causes habitat loss and fragmentation, which decreases the area in which species can live and restricts their movements, causing population declines and eventual extinction. I support the development and diversification of our housing stock. But because of our intense strain on this planet, we must think strategically and deliberately about how and where we want to develop. Regarding the recent zoning changes, it is unclear to me what the point of town-wide changes are and why they are necessary. Can't special exemptions be granted for specific sites without requiring town-wide changes? How do these changes make us more thoughtful stewards of our children's future? What is clear to me is the effect of these changes. They remove a critical checkpoint in the development process, reducing the opportunity for thoughtful discussion and restraint and increasing the chance for careless development. I support rolling back these changes, not because I'm against development, but because they seem unnecessary and will likely cause more harm than help. I hope the TPZ Commission welcomes the opportunity for deliberate, environmentally conscious planning. TPZ and its authority over land use change sits at ground zero of the biodiversity crisis. More than any other commission, it is in TPZ's power to alleviate this crisis or to make it worse. It is my sincere wish that the commission takes this responsibility seriously. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Can you submit a copy of that?
Sure.
Would anyone else like to come forward to give a public comment? But when you do, please sign in.
My name is Michael Broderick. I live at 5 Old Still Road in Woodbridge. I have been a person interested in development and actually served on the same commission as you do previously. And I was really shocked to find out about this proposal. I was busily preparing for Thanksgiving. I had no idea about this. It was not publicized in any place that I looked. And so I didn't find out until my clients at my veterinary hospital started telling me that this horrible change had been made to our town, and what could I do about it? So I've always been interested and follow what's going on, and yet I had no idea about it. And it shows that this commission is out of touch with the community, because you don't even know how we get our information today. And obviously, most people don't get the New Haven Register anymore. That's an antiquated thing that most people just don't have. I see the New York Times, I never see New Haven Register in Woodbridge. So anyways, that's the first mistake you made. I totally support revising, going back to and support the amendment to go back to our previous zoning commission status. And I think this was so ill-advised. I don't understand why this commission does not care about the public sitting here when you make decisions. When I was on the commission, we never had groups like this in opposition to what we've done, because we carefully considered what people wanted and the impact on the town. You've done neither. And, it seems all you were interested in was getting this application approved. That is not why you're here. You are supposed to be protecting the character of our town and its integrity. That's what the mission of the Zoning Commission is in Woodbridge. And I don't understand the radical change that's occurred over the last couple of years. Maybe it's the people here. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong here, but it's not what has been. I've lived here since 1976, and I have never seen changes like this that have come along to this town. This opens up the community to massive development because those sewer and water lines are in various parts of town, as already stated. The other thing is, what about your control of the impact to the majority of the residents in town? This would blow up our school system. If you add another 100 children from these units, which could easily happen, that will necessitate the town building an addition to Beecher School. Was that even discussed? No, I don't think so. And the other thing, what about the impact again to the fire department? We don't even have buildings that are this height now anywhere in town. So then it necessitates us buying more fire equipment. Again, so ill-conceived, not thoughtful to the general public. What is going on? And Woodbridge, the reason Woodbridge is the way it is from the Zoning Commission. I don't know if you're aware, but I know this. Woodbridge was one of the first communities in the United States, going back to 1932, that had zoning regulations. And that's really what has caused what we have today. You are in the process of destroying what we have and what is developed in this town. That's disgusting. And that's why there's so much outrage with what you've done. So you have the ability to reverse it, get the community involvement, and that's what you should be doing as our representatives. You're appointed by our elected people in town. You should be reflecting our wishes, not a developer's. And also, one last comment to Mr. LaFountain. Mr. LaFountain, your comment tells me that you, even though you've been here, you have no idea what this town wants. You really should go back to New York City. You should basically be fired, and we should make your firm as a campaign election issue to get rid of you and your firm, that you're supporting a change like this, because it shows you have no idea what people in town really want, or you would know that. Thank you.
So we need to tone down the rhetoric a little bit, please, folks. It is getting late. Other folks who'd like to come forward and make a public comment? I'll ask again, would anyone else like to come forward and make a public comment? Sure. Please sign in, and then after you sign in, state your name for the record.
Walden Dillaway, 1196 Johnson Road. Just two brief comments. I think, despite what I heard, most of the people in this room are in favor of increasing low-income housing. The fact that no one was in this room December 2nd, and you now have a room full of people speaks for itself. We support the proposed proposal tonight and reject the scandalous behavior of this group on December 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Would anyone else like to come forward and give public comment on the application before you? Thank you. If you could sign in, state your name for the record once you've signed in.
Good evening, Robert Zasco. I actually submitted comments earlier.
You do have to sign in, though.
Okay, I will do that. Does somebody have a pen?
Did someone take the pen?
Somebody
Sorry.
took the pen.
Go ahead and sign. Okay. I'll be brief.
Just reintroduce yourself.
Okay,
again.
Robert Zasco, 6 Westward Road. I did submit written comments earlier, so I will try to be brief and just reiterate a few points. I think very often it is not the case that you get a second chance to do something. We have that here today. You've heard from many residents that we need to do better. We have an opportunity to do that, and we have an opportunity to do that thinking broadly and holistically how to achieve all of the desires of the folks in this room, and I do believe it can be done. The state of Connecticut and others around the United States are focusing on transit-oriented development, mixed commercial use. I think we can get to a place where we have housing diversity, we have low-income housing, we have affordable housing, we have a plan of conservation that helps protect the environment that we live in so that we can actually benefit from some of these housing types. I would really urge that the board take this opportunity to review what we've done, to start over, and let's come up with a really good plan that is very holistic. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Apologies, I hit something on my phone that I shouldn't have. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a public comment? Would anyone else like to come forward and make a public comment? You know that I asked 3 times. Third time, last chance. Anyone like to make a public comment on the application before us? All right, seeing none, I need a motion to close our public hearing. I will move to close our public hearing.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion on the closure of the public hearing? All in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? So our public hearing has been closed. I would like to take the opportunity to thank everyone in the room for coming, particularly the public for your participation in the process today, through your written comments and through your oral comments that you've presented so far. I want to thank our commission members for being good listeners and for your questions. I want to thank the applicants for your presentation and for our consultant for your assistance in this process. So let's take a 2-minute break again while we let folks who want to depart, and then we'll bring in the Toll Brothers who've been waiting patiently.
Patiently.
back into order, and we're now in the new business, which there was new business in our on our agenda, so we'll move to our work session. And I will thank the folks from Toll Brothers for your patience as we stuck to our posted schedule of events tonight. So we really appreciate your willingness to hang on with us until now. So if you'd like to come forward, introduce yourself, and we can talk about your request to reduce the bond on file. Just introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Eric Linkos. I'm a senior project manager at Time Bond, here with Mike Samola with Toll Brothers. And what we're here for is pretty simple. We're just looking for a reduction to the bond over at the Toll Brothers community over on Bradley Road. I'm not sure what else we need to present on or discuss, but.
And I think part of, if I remember, Chris, part of our questions were the updates on kind of where things stood in the two different phases, and this was to, and perhaps walk me through, but am I correct that you've now completed the stormwater retentions on both?
Well, for storm drainage, it's complete throughout both parcels, or both sides of the street. The southern portion is largely completed fully because there's only one building left to be done that's over on the side, but everything else has been completed, is pretty well set. If you go out there, you can see that. On the north side, it's still under construction, obviously, but the storm drainage on the north side has been fully completed.
And the request is to, apologies, I'm having to come back to this and focus in on it. The request is to release the bond in its entirety, or
No, reduction.
No. Okay, just partially.
Correct.
So that's on the second page. It's in very tiny print. So they're asking it to be a revised amount of $26,555 from the original bond of $76,895.
So this is showing how they would calculate per line item the different sediment erosion control that the bond's covering.
And the theory here is because it's, the south side is almost all built, and
There's no more S&E even needed on the south side currently until the construction of that final building on the far, what would that be, the far eastern side or western side? That's the only building that would require S&E at that time, and it would
sediment and erosion.
Correct.
Control. Yeah,
Sediment
just
erosion
make
controls.
sure we're defining our acronyms at nearly 9:30 at night.
Yes, and the rest of the sedimentation and erosion control measures on the south side have already been removed because the site is stabilized.
Gotcha. Any questions from commission members?
Is it a material difference to Toll Brothers to reduce the bond? It's not a huge amount of money, but wouldn't it take a lot of money to repair or remedy any issues that weren't completed on the north side?
Well, that's what the remaining balance is for.
So you're saying that $26,000 would fix that?
For the erosion controls, yes. There's not much left that's out there for repairs. Like I said, the drainage has been done, the ponds have been constructed. About half the homes have already been largely constructed. So there's limited left to do over there.
And you're with this company here?
Time Bond.
Time Bond, correct. We're the civil engineer and traffic engineer on the project.
And this bond only covers the stormwater management system, correct?
I believe so. That's correct,
And
yeah.
the sediment and erosion control for the stormwater management system. Just for.
And correct me if I'm wrong, so you've built the retention basin, that's where all the storm water is currently
Correct.
flowing on both sides, the north and the south. These are for hay bales, silt trowel, other sorts of things that you might
For
do.
perimeter erosion control is like silt fence to make sure it doesn't go off into the street off the property, as well as silt sacks to protect the inlet structures, things like that nature. The ponds have been constructed, so a lot of those measures are already done. They're stabilized currently, so it's minimal.
And those measures are important for the active construction when you're building the actual houses, but on the south side, all but one are built.
Correct.
And the north side, this would still cover those activities.
Until you have permanent vegetation like is established on the south side, the measures should stay in place, which is what's being left in place on the north side.
Gotcha. Is this something we need a motion for?
Yes.
I move to approve the bond reduction as presented by Toll Brothers and Time Bond.
Second.
Moved in second.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
I did.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
For a 3-hour wait.
Yeah, have a good evening.
Can I
Thank you.
talk in the zone change now?
No.
Very good. I will skip over the zoning amendment discussions and go to Baldwin Developments.
Thank you.
Sure, in 20 Lunar Drive, 23 Lunar Drive. I will make a motion to approve the site development and special permit for excavation, removal, filling, grading, and processing at both 20 Lunar Drive and 23 Lunar Drive.
Second.
I'll second it.
Aaron seconded, moved and seconded, now opening up to discussion. I think it's just it's bringing back something that was approved before. There was a
bond
comment.
amount, and
I'm sorry, Chris.
there was a bond amount that was.
Oh, do I need to have that in the motion?
Typically, you just reference to a bond that was as submitted.
With the bond as submitted, so I'll amend my original motion to make reference to the bond as submitted. Aaron, seconds? Okay, so now we're in discussion. In our public hearing, we did receive a comment about blasting. Blasting is not our purview. It is, governed by, what is it, fire marshal and public safety. But we can probably recommend to them that they consider the neighboring animal shelter and,
It's come up before in meetings, at the TPZ, similar to what you're saying, where we've had an issue where people have done this. Do you remember? I
Yeah,
can't
there was a
remember,
discussion
but-
on Luciani about blasting, and
Yes.
for what it's worth, my comment previously was blasting is a lot quicker and I think less of a disturbance than continued hammering. I think as we've seen on Luciani, I don't think we can mandate either way, but in terms of disruption to the animals and the people, I think that the controlled nature of blasting compared with the open-ended nature of hitting the rock with a hammer, but I agree, recommend it to the fire marshal for their consideration.
Yes, just so in our referral or make mention to the fire marshal to take that into account. The other comment was about restrictions on materials that can be stored, explosives, chemicals, other sorts of things. There are lots of state and federal laws that govern what can be stored at various locations, and any future entity, which we don't know who or what that may be, this could be a dentist's office for all we know, would have to follow all of those required rules and regulations. So with that, any other discussion, comments, questions on the 20 and 23 Lunar Drive? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? So that goes forward as with recognition of the bond. So in the interest of letting Andrew go,
Yeah, because if there's going to be discussion about Angelo Malisi, I have a conflict.
you have both of those, and also you've recused yourself from the Stephen Mason one. So is there anything from
No,
Scrogg?
I had forwarded the agenda and materials from the meeting last month, so I have nothing to add further than that thorough description of what the applications were.
Okay.
Thank you. Good luck, everybody.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
I did want to bring up, though, the Scrogg letter in regards to.
Sure.
Oh, probably I can't.
No, you can't.
Like, I can't talk to you about
no.
that here. Just
So,
remember.
Andrew, we will probably discuss the correspondence on that Lucy Street, but if that's okay with
That is okay, yep. And I think there was going to be a selection of a date of the special meeting, too.
We need to have one, but I don't know what date yet.
Yeah,
So
we may do that by email.
I'm gonna do it by email.
Okay.
Just be aware that you need one.
Okay.
Okay, so back up to our work session on, so we've done the things, as Andrew leaves, I'll ask, was there anything on the 804 Fountain Street? It's on the agenda, but.
It's just there as a placeholder, so people don't think we've lost it.
So we don't need to talk about that one.
And that's been sent off to your consultants, so when I come back, it'll.
We still expect to receive their recommendations before the June meeting?
I think so.
Yeah. You'll have mine. I can't speak to the others. Okay.
Yeah, no, traffic said they wouldn't, and I'm pretty sure that, the engineer will.
Great.
Right. So if that clears all the other items on our work session, basically, unless you want to keep going out of, I mean, anything as zoning enforcement officer you
I
want
just want to tell you real quick that for 110, 114 Luciani, obviously the permit has now expired. They did reapply for their building permits because the building permit is only valid for 6 months unless you keep hammering a nail, and they never started to hammer a nail because they were still working on the site, so they've got new building permits out there. But in the interim, I've asked for a survey to show that they either are or aren't in conformance with the grades that were shown on the original one, and also to have their geologists say that the slopes in the back are stable. And then I've also sent off an email to town council to ask him, whatever those show, what needs to be done. You know, do they need to come back to you for another special exception? Or does it get, there is a provision that's an exemption for 100 cubic yards of material under a building permit. So I will keep you posted, but at the moment, that's where we are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, make a quick report on the housing.
Sure, very quick.
Yeah, I just wanted to call attention that our next meeting, which is Wednesday, we're going to have representatives of SCROG talk about their regional housing strategy, and that's really a comprehensive framework. You know, it's evolving to identify needs of the towns in the SCROG area to improve their housing supply, affordability, and availability. So they're going to be going over, you know, different tools to talk about targeted infrastructure investment that could provide some additional opportunities in towns. So I would, you know, encourage, you know, folks on this commission, if you could possibly tune into the housing meeting. It's good for, in terms of how to plan for future housing opportunities. And also, as you heard tonight, you know, I would encourage the commission to watch the informational session we had on April 30th.
Was that recorded, Kathy?
It was
We can go
recorded,
back
and there's a lot of good information on there, and just so you interpret the facts, you know, the way you'd want to interpret the facts. I'll just leave it at that, because it was very compelling, and I think it's just would be good for the commission to listen to that. And that's
available on the housing, the recording?
It's on the YouTube. If you go on the YouTube and you look, you could just, I think it's still there, but you could just probably find it.
Okay, so that brings us back to the Stephen Mason amendment to the zoning regulations, and I am looking at the clock and it is 9:40, so there's a couple of options. We can continue to press forward tonight, correct?
You could, or you did get a bunch of stuff tonight, you might want to just.
There is the option of continuing to.
You don't have to act on it this evening.
Yeah, we could have a preliminary discussion tonight if we wanted to.
If you so wanted.
Look, I received, Mr. Chairman, so much information today on this matter and on the application. A lot of it came in very late today. A lot of these letters, I have not even read them for and against the application before us. So I'd like to do that.
So we've closed the public hearing portion, but we are within our right to take our.
You have 35 days to act.
Right, so that would be the option to act before next, or at our next meeting.
At your next meeting,
We
or
would
if
put
you
on the
want
work
to have a
session.
special meeting, whatever you choose.
It's not meant to delay on my part, but I just want to do my job the
No,
right way.
we do, and
Our
we,
next meeting will be similarly
yeah,
full agenda, I would imagine.
It is.
it will be.
I'm just,
And Chairman Clegg, I just want to reiterate that I did participate in this public hearing because I wanted to protect the integrity and transparency of the zoning process, but at this point, I would choose to recuse myself from acting on this application, just to preserve the process and out of an abundance of caution. So I just wanted to note
Okay.
that.
Thank you. So,
So I can tell you that as far as I know, you may have another member appointed. Whether they can get up to snuff and, you know, they can watch the hearing, I can
we
give
can
them
watch the
everything.
videos, yes.
We had an alternate appointed, didn't we?
Well, you just lost an alternate,
Right.
and you have a vacancy for an alternate, and
I think-
Kathy
was it
graciously recused herself, so.
Was it Robert Wisnia named?
Yes. So he would be an alternate. So, just mentioning, you may have, and then Paul may be back from work travels.
He's going to have to watch this.
Yeah.
But anyone who,
I just want Paul to know that I'm saying that, and he'll hear me say that later.
Oh, okay.
Paul said he was bringing margaritas tonight, so he's
Yeah,
already.
it's true. That's why I got stuck in
not living up
California.
to his word.
so Kathy, if you're recusing yourself, we can excuse you now if there is any interest in folks taking 5 or 10 minutes now, or would we rather?
I think we could have a 10-minute discussion, we'd be fine,
Yep.
it'd be good to get.
I think it'd be good to get some initial
Yep.
reactions while they're fresh, so.
Mhm.
All right.
Kathy, you also get to leave.
I get to go.
And we still have a quorum,
And then there was 4.
and then there were 4. Do I get to write that in the minutes? And then there were 4?
What do you indicate in the minutes that it was some? Italics, I think.
Good night, guys.
Thanks, Kathy, good night.
Good night.
Good night, Kathy. Drive safe.
Bye, Kathy.
So, I'll wait for Kathy to go. All right, so do I need to do a motion to have us talk, or just,
No,
we can just talk?
No, it's in your
We're in the
work
work
session, you can just talk.
So we've heard a lot. I do agree, we also got a lot of things literally as we were sitting down, and we will receive our, a copy of the PowerPoint as well. A couple of things. So I do want to reiterate that we have followed our procedures for the noticing of our public hearings.
Town attorney weighed in.
And the town attorney weighed in, that we have followed all the rules that we have been following ever since I've been the chair of planning and zoning. And consistency in those rules is actually important, that we're not making exceptions. I did hear at least one comment that said that anything that is important needs to actually go to everyone in town, or we can't make decisions in holidays or in, I mean, we will literally never be meeting and making decisions if we can't meet in November because of Thanksgiving, and December because of Christmas, and July because of the 4th of July. I mean, so we will continue to, as long as I'm still chair, follow the procedures we've been following, and those are prescribed to us on where we have to put notice, and to the extent that the town is pursuing other broader requirements and changes to how meetings are noticed and publicized and whatnot, that is the town's prerogative, but it's important that the town does it consistently for all, 40 of our boards and commissions.
There's a lot more than that, but anyway.
I was being
Yeah, no, I know,
polite.
but there's more than that.
Yes, but
And just so everybody knows, there is on the town website now, there is a thing for hearings and decisions, so we are posting to there. But that's not our legal obligation. We're still doing our legal obligation.
And I do know that the applicant noted that we did actually follow our legal obligations. They weren't happy about it, but the.
I feel we did too. I
Yes.
think we followed the law. I think we did what was correct. I think Chris's oversight of this and ours was correct. But as a practical matter, people didn't know about it. I was a little surprised that people didn't come out. Like, no one came, so I kind of figured something went wrong.
And so other things reflecting it actually is from a question that you posed, Jeff. I do think we did give folks in the last 3+ hours that we've been going at it an opportunity to voice their views and
We
opinions
did.
on this topic, and on our townwide changes to these to the opportunity housing opportunities in zoning. It is important to know that it is only in the places with water and sewer, which is part of the underlying rationale for the places where our infrastructure is capable of housing more density, is part of our calculus of why it does make sense. There's also opportunity housing, which is intended to increase the opportunity. The fact that it's been 4 years with our current system and we've not had an application is telling to me that
It is.
something needed to change.
It's worth saying.
The other things that I really honestly and truly appreciate, and you heard from a number of the public commenters and from Amy and Morella and in their applications, is that there's a lot of ideas for improvements and changes and updates to all sorts of housing opportunities across the board, which we should take advantage of, and we are taking advantage of in our plan of conservation development process and the processes that will follow that, where we will then be able to look at our housing, opportunity housing rules and our other mixed-use development, increased density, increased transit-oriented development opportunities, increased publicization of accessory dwelling units, which we're seeing more of those come in now, which is actually a good thing. So, to me, those don't have to be mutually exclusive. It doesn't require us to rescind this particular application to still do all those things in the spirit of continual improvement and adjustment to our zoning regulations over time. So those, I just wanted to sort of get my sort of takeaways out on the table, and I welcome folks who wanted to. Maybe we'll go till 10 if folks want to. Hopefully that wasn't more than 3 or 4 minutes, but
I think it was, you're correct that the applicant, the woman who spoke for the applicant, acknowledged that we were acted within the legal requirement, but also stated that they, even if they'd spoken earlier and we disagreed, and if we disagree tonight, that is not, she will see it as not sufficient. That it sounded like from my hearing that she was saying that there is only one conclusion we can come to, and that if we don't, we haven't heard from enough people. It's not sufficient in her mind until such time as we're convinced in terms of prejudging the outcome. But I also think that we need to, the goal of opportunity housing is to increase affordable housing. And I think that obviously you could build 100% affordable housing and it would do that, but I think best practices in towns far and wide are to do, as everyone suggested, to have lots of different housing options, and by including market rate housing, you end up creating more affordable housing. There is at different levels. There's obviously technical definitions of affordable housing, but you allow, as some people said, you allow people to retire in the community that they lived in. You allow kids to continue to live in the community, and it opens up housing that people would be stuck in because they want to stay in the community, and that allows people's of varying level of income to come into a community. And by increasing in considered ways, which I believe we're doing, the amount of housing in the community, you allow for reasonable growth and increased affordability. And I think that we, discussed this over the course. There was a lot of focus on that December 2nd meeting, and I would need to review the minutes of the previous meetings, but I know we spent multiple meetings talking about the ideas of this zoning change on this lot across Zone A, and do believe that we spent a good amount of consideration on.
Including in that December meeting. I mean, that December meeting was informed both by our consultant and our conversations with the developer and our conversations around this table of folks where we did discuss best practices. We did discuss the 20% affordability versus 12%, but 12% with the 60 and 80 split versus the 80, and that sort of improved understanding of what it takes to actually get stuff built nowadays. And that was front and center in the December 2nd, 2024 meeting, and our decisions, frankly, to do not just a one-off for one parcel, but also to try to improve this zoning opportunity townwide.
It is a little unfortunate, though, that the changes to the regulations were so closely affiliated with the developer proposed project that they were a little conflated and stepped on top of each other in a way that I think made people in town frustrated. But let me keep going because this is important. No one was building anything, so nothing was getting done. And we have all these other, issues about trying to get something done. But the fact that a certain project was so determinate in what seemed to drive the regulations that we should be setting, not a developer, that was unfortunate.
So, but Jeff, no, I totally get that point and the perhaps perception of that, but that's actually a pretty standard practice in zoning commissions. Zoning change amendments come in from the commission deciding to do themselves, from an applicant seeking a change, from advocates coming in to make a change. So there are multiple pathways. This is one that is used.
And on that point, the developer actually just suggests, and I know people don't like this word, but a spot zoning type approach versus an all of a residential area approach. There's different ways to do that, and I know that causes controversy too. I think anything we're going to do is going to cause controversy. But there's that approach as well, to have more limited, and in a small town like Woodbridge, that might make sense.
Yeah, although that makes it more vulnerable because spot zoning is not
allowed.
Yeah, and they can.
Is it illegal in Connecticut to do that?
Yeah, you can, which is why the proposed language for that spot zone was somewhat tortured in terms of like, I don't want to remember. It was a unit next to a limited access. Or I'm sorry, it was,
between 5 acres and 5.2 acres.
which is what you do. And
it was
tortured. I trust
agree.
Mr. Neff in his legal opinion that probably would pass muster, but it also opens up to a very clear avenue, in my opinion, for.
The other thing that you have to remember too is that the developer could have just come in with an 830G and there would have been no conversation.
It would have. That goes right to court action, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, it doesn't.
It's an application that comes in, but it comes in with no parameters. In a sense.
Can you finish that?
Well, no, I'm just saying.
That's a whole other conversation.
It's a whole other conversation.
Okay.
Basically, you were having a discussion with a developer about making regs work that were developable, and it was your choice to adopt them or not.
And I want to give you a chance to weigh in if you want, or you
Yeah,
can look at the clock and say.
So, I just want to understand what our shared understanding of what constitute opportunity housing zones in town. What areas
So
meet
for
those requirements?
Sure, for the Zone A, it is only the places that are served by water and sewer. So it is we've had maps at various times of sort of.
And then it's still a special permit.
Yep.
And are those this area of South Beecher Road and this area of Center Road, or are there more than that?
I'm confused why they keep mentioning Beecher, because Beecher has sewer that comes in from Ansonia and water that comes in from center. So unless you're at the confluence, which is Beecher Road School, you don't have both.
Well, that's,
And-
it's a complicated, I'm sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt,
no, I'm
but it's
just
a
saying,
complicated thing.
you know,
It's a
where it
map is-
currently overlaps,
Yeah.
it stops at the Country Club of Woodbridge.
Yeah.
Or former Country Club of Woodbridge, whatever it is.
So, I mean, my concern with the retort to, yeah, but there's a special exception, is that, you know, last month we granted a special exception in large part because the zoning regulations said that we could. And, you know, I'm not trying to relitigate that conversation, but I didn't think that that decision was congruent with the testimony we received or the specific character of that parcel of land and what the neighbors were telling us about it. So if there were an application for a 4-story apartment building next to Beecher Road School, what privilege and responsibility do we have to evaluate the character of land use attended that application?
I mean, our deliberation on a special exception and the public's, it's a matter of trust. And, you know, obviously, people spoken that they don't trust us in our decisions, but, you know, we are empowered to make that and to deliberate it and then vote whether we, so as a board, that's, at least I feel that we can, you know, that is a reasonable thing for us to be entrusted with. And all the information from the public, from our consultants, and then we deliberate, and we had, you know, the last meeting, we had a very spirited deliberation, and it was, and I'm glad we had a spirited deliberation.
It's a healthy sign that
The
we're
matter
actually
exactly. The
doing
matter
what we're
deserved it,
supposed
and
to.
I'm glad that it was something that we could discuss, and I thought we spent an appropriate amount of time and got into the details on it. So that is how I see, you know, is my view on that as our role.
So we could choose not to grant a special exception.
Yeah.
to
Oh,
development.
definitely.
Yeah.
So, and it was highlighted in our consultant's memo from April 29th. It's also in our zoning regulations. This is all in section 6.3C. These are the thresholds for why we would decide to grant, and it includes things like the harmony and appropriateness of the use and the site design in relation to the general area and to adjacent properties. For your example of building this next to Beecher Road School, that's a clear one that we can say, no, this is not one that fits next to Beecher Road School.
And you can also ask for changes to, you can have a dialogue with an applicant that may change the scale and the scope of their project in order to grant a special exception. And that also is very common.
And that's specifically called out in the following, the next section on conditions and safeguards, said if we can find a special exception appropriate, but have reasonable is an important word there, but conditions, safeguards, et cetera, related to those factors. So it could say, we don't think that this particular design is in keeping with the school next door, but another roof line or scheme or whatever would be, and we could require that as a condition of the approval.
Mr. Chair, if I could point out one thing.
I don't think you can.
I think it works.
He can, because he's a consultant, as long as he's talking about stuff that was brought up in the.
Okay, I just wanted to check and
Nope.
make sure. Just in case, I didn't want to go.
That is okay. The one I wanted to point out is actually number 5, in that the criteria that you have to look at is the scale of the proposed site and structures. So exactly to the chairman's point, if you have, you know, a neighborhood of all one-story houses, yes, this allows you to go to the 4, but you have a hard time approving the 4 stories based on this. So the regulation that you have allows for the max, not even the norm necessarily.
And these are all the sorts of things that we'll likely be talking about next month. So we have an actual application in front of us.
If we're on speaking terms with Justin again, can I ask a question?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure, it's late and I want to make sure I'm following all the rules.
I think, you know, the point was made by Ms. Morella about build out. Is that the kind of thing that you could easily prepare? I'm not trying to spend more of the town's money.
So the short answer is no. It's probably not a six-figure job, but it's, you know, probably 50 to 75,000 for either us as a consultant or any consultant you choose to do. And what that means is, basically what that involves is looking at any properties that are not being occupied right now, what could fit there. It's sort of looking at, I hate to use this phrase, it's sort of looking at a worst case scenario. You know, it's saying, okay, well, you have these lots that are vacant. This one is, you look at the country club, this is what could potentially fit there. It's not saying what would fit there by any sort of market conditions. It's just showing what could fit there.
The most developed case possible.
Correct. So it's again, it's sort of if the market was just in full swing and anybody could build whatever they wanted and still be successful, that's what you could fit in.
Could I ask you at the very least to verify the places in town that are truly opportunity? Because I don't want to go on what one email says versus another email. You know, I don't know which of these images is really the truth. I'd appreciate it getting it from you.
Yeah, I think we can get that together. That's no problem.
Thank you.
Right, that got us to about 10 o'clock. Do we feel like we've had a good sort of post-read? I still think we should continue it to give everyone
I feel we ought to do that.
the opportunity to do homework.
Should we have a special meeting?
Well,
Well,
let's see what's gonna happen with the POCD.
Yeah, if we schedule
And
that
then
meeting, we
if you
maybe we
schedule
do
that,
that.
maybe you
Yeah,
can
that's
add
a
it
good idea.
into that
Yeah,
and go from there.
Yeah.
okay.
Because those are typically a little bit shorter. Relative to the email that you got from Julie.
Yes, so the last thing is our
Brown,
correspondence received. So this is the,
This is the one that was the gathering where they did all the renovations and then
a restaurant across from the old
press
West,
behind Monroe Muffler.
but across from the old, like, Amity Meat.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, but further down, not right
Yeah.
across.
It's behind
On this-
Monroe Muffler.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
So the new proposal is to do a restaurant and
And have cooking classes
And
and
a
have
few
a
other-
market in there, so.
And a
I
farmer's
don't know
market.
that, what that is. It's kind of a mixed retail restaurant. I mean,
It's a
there are
fresh idea
places
for
that
that space.
sometimes
Yep.
offer classes, but I wasn't sure if they would need to amend the restaurant license. Or, I
But
don't
from-
wanna have people come back just for the sake of coming back, because it's nice
So
to get
it-
places occupied, but I
Yeah.
don't want them to legally get occupied.
Sounds nice.
It sounds, core is restaurant?
Yeah.
And it's currently zoned and approved as a restaurant,
It's been a restaurant forever.
right?
Yeah, it all seemed okay.
These seems like add-ons to that function, so I'm fine
Okay.
with it staying as that function.
And that's fine.
Go
'cause I-
forth and bring in
I didn't wanna
these
give them a green light.
additional amenities that are now in the new world of
Yeah.
restauranting and.
agree.
So that's
Terrific.
okay.
That sounds great. I don't know if that's.
I will
right.
get your minutes written, but,
Yep.
I was doing my case study so I can officially be a zoning enforcement officer. And it was like going back to college, cause it was
Is that why you're an acting zoning enforcement officer?
I am an acting, well, I don't know what I am, because I never
I
send me
will,
anything.
I will move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Thank you all.
Moved.
Good night.
10:01.
I move.